Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the March 12th, 2024 work session. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Sergio, would you lead us off?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if we could have a moment of silence, if you could remain standing. Moment of silence for all of our first responders and soldiers fighting for our freedoms and keeping us safe every day. Thank you.
Amen.
Just before we jump into this, we're waiting for our grant writing service person to get online, but I will mention just one thing. The American Legion is having an open house this Friday starting at 4 p.m., 235 Veterans Road, and that is celebrating the Legion's 105th anniversary. So please stop by. They're going to do presentations. They'll have things set up for from World War II, Vietnam, Korea, and possibly even some World War I stuff if I could get it down to them as well. So it should be interesting, a lot of stuff, learn about the history of the Legion and what they do, and they are also opportunities if your father or grandfather served for someone to be in the Sons of the American Legion, and I think it's a little less stringent or there's more opportunities of people serving for the American Legion Auxiliary for both men and women as well. So they're starting that up, and you can find some information out about that. Not yet? All right. Well, he will have to wait. We'll convene our public hearing for 3167 Lincoln Drive for the construction of a deck. Dan, you want to come up and talk about it real quick?
Good evening. So as minor as this sounds, we're just putting a deck on the rear of an existing home. Chapter 178, our wetlands law, doesn't allow the issuance of an administrative permit when there's a state wetlands involved. So because of the presence of the state wetlands, it appears they're in the buffer. I don't know if it's been flagged yet or not, but the applicant's architect is here and can get into that a little bit. But basically, that's why, as minor as an issue as it is, what's triggering it is the proximity to the state-regulated wetlands.
Did we have a letter from the state declaring that they did not think it was state? All right.
Yeah, the last I saw, I believe there was a letter to assist the applicant with the procedure to have a state wetlands biologist come to the property and evaluate the boundary of the state wetlands.
I was under the impression that they had all of that in place and they were going to use special sonotubes and all this other stuff.
I'll hand it off to the applicant.
Architect. We did have somebody coming from New Paltz, from New York State, DC, checking the property, and they said everything is fine.
You have a letter that says that or something that's documented?
So far, we have not received, no. So,
They called me directly. I'm sorry. They called me directly and they did came over. They look around. They didn't say anything. They just say everything is fine.
so we will request the.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we need to see something in writing, right?
Well, we have something here. This action is located outside New York City's watershed. As such, no further review is required. This is from DEP. Thank you. Planning Board, suggest foundation plan provider. Conservation Board, it's been kicked to the Conservation Board by planning, and there was no tree permit. This is it. I thought there was another. Let me just. Thank you. So that was DEP on that one.
I got DP, I got New York State DEC, what's
Right,
this?
I have it here. The Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, or department, received your State Environmental Quality Review Act, lead agency coordination on December 19th. Proposal involves the construction of a deck and shrub planting at an already existing residence. The project site is located 3167. Department has no objection to the Town of Yorktown Town Board serving as lead agency for this product based on a review of the submitted materials, including EAF and associated site plan. So protection of water stream disturbances. There are no water bodies that appear on our registry maps at the location you identified. Therefore, if there's a stream or pond outlet present at the site with year-round flow, it assumes the classification of the watercourse into which it feeds, and a protection of water permit may or may not be required to disturb its bed or banks. If there is a stream or pond outlet present at the site that runs intermittently, seasonally, it is not protected, and a protection of waters permit would not be required to disturb its bed or banks. If a permit is not required, please note, however, you are still responsible for ensuring that work shall not pollute any stream or water body. Care shall be taken to stabilize any disturbance area properly after construction, and all necessary precautions shall be taken to prevent contamination of the stream or water body by silt, sediment, fuel, solvents, lubricants, or any other pollutant associated with the project. Let's see, it talks about freshwater wetlands, water quality certifications. If the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers requires a permit pursuant to the Section 404 of the Clean Water Act for discharge. Then it's state listed species. No records of sensitive resources were identified from the state listed species. Although absence of data does not mean that other rare or state listed species, natural communications, or significant habitats do not exist on or adjacent to the proposed site. State pollutant discharge elimination system for stormwater. Natural resources. So Dan, come back up, please. Thank you. So the way I'm reading this is they are not, New York City DEC is not seeing any type of stream water running through there that would,
I believe, but is that the response to the seeker circulation?
this is from January 29th, 2024. So yes, I believe they mentioned the secret in here.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of their generic desktop review. Earlier in the just so you know the genesis of this, what we do, we receive an application. The DEC has what's called their environmental mapper. So that's our go-to resource to see if New York State DEC is involved. When we go to that app and the mapping associated with it, it told us that the property was entirely what they refer to as a check zone, which means somebody has to come out and look to see
And
what
that's
the
a,
boundary of the wetlands
that's a
is.
request for wetland determination
Right.
and delineation?
Correct. So apparently that has happened. Somebody from New Paltz has been to the property. So,
We're just waiting for the results on it.
yeah, as long as, I mean, it's a condition of the draft resolution that we teed up for you. So whether we get a permit to work on the buffer or a letter stating that no permit is required,
Yeah, that you have the
That-
clear to go, yeah.
yeah, we're good to go. Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
I would follow up on that.
So, and you have a draft resolution you just, oh, thank you.
It's, I realize that it's slightly different because there was some revisions to the drawings, but otherwise, the resolution before you, we just tweaked it to reflect the latest set of drawings. Is that correct?
Right,
Did you have an
with the-
opportunity to look at that? All right.
Does it say in the resolution that one of the requirements is gonna be a letter from the agency?
Yeah.
It does say that?
Granted, subject to the signing of the plans.
Yeah,
Let's see.
that's on page
Applicable
two,
to the town board with a
conditions that
report.
must be
So-
met prior to the supervisor signing the plans. The bottom of page two.
All right, so the conditions, a permit from New York State DEC for activity in the buffer of wetlands A8, a construction monitoring fee in the amount of $300 must be submitted to the engineering department clerk. An erosion and sediment control bond or other collateral acceptable to the town board and in form acceptable to the town attorney shall be submitted to the engineering department. Said security shall be in the amount of $500, which shall be released upon required documentation of satisfactory completion of all work and stabilization of the site. Okay, and then conditions of wetland permit, this is kind of important stuff too. Work of any kind shall not commence prior to the issuance of a Town of Yorktown building permit. The applicant agrees to allow periodic inspections by the town and its consultants. The town staff shall inspect the site at the end of construction, but prior to the issuance of a C of O to ensure compliance with the permit. No additional disturbance or modification to the approved plans permitted without prior written approval from the town engineer, and a pre-construction meeting with the applicant's contractors and the town staff must be held prior to commencement of work. So you want to understand those conditions, so, all right. Did anyone want to speak on this? Okay.
Ken Belfer with my Mohegan Lake Improvement District hat on tonight. I live on Amazon Road. I just want to say that we watch very carefully when there's any construction proposed that's either in the wetlands around Mohegan Lake or in the buffer zone of the wetlands. And then there are DEC wetlands on the southwest and northeast ends of the lake. In this case, we have no concern about somebody putting a deck on the back of their house, at all, assuming that all the conditions are met. I think I heard that one condition was the DEC issuing any permits that they need to issue. So,
Or saying that there's no.
Or an approval
Yes.
letter.
yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, Ken, thanks.
So DEC from New Paltz already blessed
Right.
this.
Yeah, but
I get it.
we need it in writing.
We didn't write it, that's all I'm
Right.
waiting for.
Cross the Ts, dot the Is.
Perfect.
Anyone else like to speak on this? I have a motion to close the public hearing.
Yeah, motion.
Second.
I think it's pretty minor. It's been a while.
Yes, absolutely.
let's
It's been
move
a
it,
long
let's move
time
it.
now, Mr.
Too
Trevino.
long.
Yeah, so just as a matter of housekeeping, I believe we circulated it as
Yes.
part of a coordinated review, so just adopt a negative declaration pursuant to seeker, and then you can adopt the resolution in hand.
Okay. Motion to declare negative declaration.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and motion to accept the town board resolution approving Irvina Wetland Permit WP 05923, Town of Yorktown, New York, with the aforementioned conditions being met.
Motion.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. So as soon as you get
Get us
that
that letter, yeah.
information, get together with engineering, pre-construction meeting, nothing should start before that, and then they'll get you moving and where you need to be.
And schedule the barbecue. Don't forget to schedule the barbecue.
Did he come on yet? Yep. All right, so now we're gonna jump backwards and meet Jay from G&G Municipal Consulting, which is a grant writing service. Jay, you there?
We kind of see you, Jay.
He's definitely not a Zoom meeting expert.
You got to stand on your tippy toes, Jay.
We just have a black screen there.
Yeah, I'm traveling right now. We sold my father's house today, and I had to go to his house, and so I'm traveling. So I just left the videos, just me in a car while my better half drives.
Gotcha.
I apologize for that.
That's quite all right. Jay, I know we put out an RFP. We spoke to you and two other grant writers. We have come to a conclusion, I believe, that we would like to see you as our grant writer, but we'll have to vote on that. But if you could tell us a little bit, or tell our audience a little bit about you so they understand why we chose you.
Oh, fantastic. I appreciate that. I can give you the brief history again, and, I realize you heard it just a few days ago, but I'll run through it. My career started in law enforcement. I was injured on duty, got elected as a county legislator, and it was a small county, and worked, one of the things we worked directly with our department heads to write grants, and everything from, roads to bridges to economic development to water to sewer, parks, a whole, host of things. And then I was working for a state senator, and on behalf of the senator, I was working with various towns and villages and helping them with their state grants, on behalf of the senator. Started doing some grant work on my own, a business that started out at home and has now grown to, and by the way, we did hire another grant writer. I know you had asked me last week. We hired another full-time grant writer today. She starts in 2 weeks, so we're very excited about that. And we've grown to 2 offices in the state, multiple full-time employees. And, we've had some success. We've done very well in a multitude of grants, everything from New York Forward at $4.5 million to water and sewer grants of, up to $9 million, to everything in between, from planning grants to, the things that, every town needs. And like I told you before, my goal is to listen to you. I want to come down and sit with you all and sit with your department heads and, put a 1-year plan, a 5-year plan together, listen to you and see what your needs are. And it's my job to go out and research. It's my job to go out and find the grants, once I know your wish list and your projects, and make my team available to you. And I think, we've got a long record of success of being accessible. And, there's so many things opening up and so many things to look at. We did to help you.
Right. So, board, any comments?
Okay.
So Jay, I was quite impressed with your presentation, and I got to tell you, what sold me was your the way you laid out the pricing and how how that's all disseminated and what's included in it, and you also included one of those pretty large grants. What was it? I forget what it's called.
The New York Forward.
The New York Forward one, yeah, and you had indicated that you would be including that as part of your initial proposal, and that's still the case, yes?
That's still the case, and we would put that in the contract. We like that grant in the office. We, like I said, we've had some success with it, and it puts $4.5 million into your community, half of which would go to the town, the other half to your, your private partners, in the business or nonprofit community. And yes, of course, we would include that. With regards to pricing, look, as a county legislator, as an elected official, the last thing you want is a mystery in pricing. So we're very blunt and very upfront with, what we'll cover and what we won't. And, my staff would, the New York Forward, it's something, they like it, they'd be interested in it, I'd be interested in it. It's an exciting grant, and, we've gotten it. We'd like to do that for you.
And we appreciate that. I have no further questions.
A quick comment, Jay. This is Patrick. I was impressed with your presentation, and I really liked the whole idea that you were going to go out and do the research, and how much time you spend up in Albany. You're going to have first knowledge of how what grants come out. So, well, good luck, and we welcome you aboard.
Well, we haven't voted.
I
yet,
appreciate it.
You might not make it. And just so people understand, so when you do an RFP, especially on services, you have to interview in closed session, because you can't have someone saying, hey, this is what I'm offering you, this is my pricing, and someone else coming right behind them saying, hey, I'm going to match that and give you this and give you that. So we do that interview in closed, and then, of course, bring someone on to meet the town, so to speak, and then we will move forward with a vote. Lou, did you have anything?
No, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Did anyone want to come up and speak on our grant writing? Going once, going twice. Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
I'm sorry, the, oh, wait, where are we? Oh, that's just, I'm sorry.
We're not open for anything.
I'm looking at the next thing down the line.
So,
Thank you.
say goodnight to Jay.
Yes, Jay, have a good night. And
All right.
can I have a motion to hire G&G Municipal Consulting?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you very
Now-
much.
Now you go. Welcome aboard.
Congratulations, Jay.
Welcome aboard.
Get home safe.
Welcome aboard, yes.
All right.
We'll be coming down soon. I've got an income survey that I'll be conducting not far from you, and I'd love to come in and meet everybody and sit down and put a plan together.
Sure, schedule something with Lorraine, and we'll get that going. We have, I think this is going to be effective as of April 1st, and we will have a list of things ready to go.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you, Jay.
Thank
All
you, Jay.
right, take care.
All right, now we'll go back to the laws, sorry. Convene public hearing to consider a proposed local law known as the Large Scale Energy System Moratorium. Adam, why don't you lead us out on this?
Say that again?
Why don't you lead us out on this?
Sure.
Go.
So, the law as drafted would put a 6-month hiatus on basically any town agency from issuing any permits that would allow any of these projects to move forward. These large-scale energy systems. So it wouldn't apply to the smaller scale stuff like, well, certainly it wouldn't apply to, you know, roof-mounted systems or the lower threshold systems that are laid out in the code. So it's really the big scale.
Over how
projects.
many kilowatts is that?
I have the number. Just give me 1 second. I think it's 1 megawatt, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, while you look that up, we do have some comments. There were a couple of comments regarding a possible solar array for land purchased by at the Coangelo subdivision, which I think that was something that the planning department was looking at, John? Yep. So, you know, this really, well, we're not putting it up, and it's not part of the moratorium. They are in favor of not having it there. So with the moratorium, that would be, they would be happy for that till we could get a chance to relook at the law. This is, the Conservation Board is in favor of the moratorium. They have some recommended reading as well for us. And they're looking forward to participating in the review of our law. We do have a letter from Couch and White from a John Ahern Esquire. I believe they are doing they're doing the work at IBM, yep. They are concerned that they've put a lot into this, so we will look at the wording on, you know, how far along in the process that we are. I know I had a conversation with Adam about that earlier.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, the simple tweak to be made to address, well, IBM's concern would be to remove certificates of occupancy from the language of the moratorium as it's written. There were other concerns raised about projects that are approved by the planning board, for example, but haven't begun construction, haven't received a building permit. And, you know, the question is, do you want to remove the words building permit from the moratorium also, so that projects that have received site plan approval, for example, but haven't obtained their building permit can proceed toward construction? So if those two concerns are important to the board and you want to address them by allowing those projects to also move forward during the moratorium period, then we can just remove the words building permits and certificates of occupancy from the first line.
But I don't see, I have a list here of projects. I don't see, and John, maybe you can help. I don't see any solar projects that have been A, approved by planning, and B, haven't received a building permit. It looks like
anyone that's been approved by planning, which is 2, 4, 6 of them, all have their building permits already. And then there were another 2 on the, in progress, under review, which haven't received approval from planning, and as a result, haven't received the building permit, because you can't. So, I don't know if that tweak really does anything for us, in terms of what's in the pike right now.
Well, it does based on the fact that
Future application.
there are no COs right now going to be administered, and if, like, IBM is
Well,
on.
the CO part, but the building permit part is,
Mute.
is that accurate, John?
I'm not sure if the Foothill Street or the Kitchewan Farm has building permits yet.
Oh, the list says
That
it-
information I don't have in front of me. The others do, as you stated.
Foothill says building permit 4/24/2023. Is that the application or the issuance? Because that makes a difference. I got Foothill Street.
Yeah, it could be the issuance, so I can't.
It's academic, because if you remove the words, and there have been none that have received site plan approval, it won't have any impact whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think our memo, just to round this out, our memo from the planning board recommended the building permit and the CO situation comes out, in that anything that today has received planning board approval, in their opinion, in our opinion, should move forward. Everything else that is under review should be captured in the moratorium for the 6-month period, and if you choose to extend it later. We also recommended that you allow reviews to continue with acknowledgement of the moratorium from the applicant.
At their own risk.
At their own risk.
At their own risk, which is what we talked about.
That one is right here. Thank you, John. Save me the reading. And then we have something from Zarin and Steinmetz, who is also representing IBM. So we'll discuss that in a little more detail. We have Westchester County Planning Board referrals. They feel that we are in the specific intent of what the law is by posting the moratorium. So they think it should be enacted with specific intent and purpose and should not extend beyond a reasonable period, and that the proposed moratorium appears to be consistent with the criteria. And then when we have a decision, we will let them know, so it's part of the record. And we have New York City DEP. Local laws. So based upon the review, they basically they basically agree. A project sponsor should be required to assess the battery storage systems as well for damage during routine O&M. So there's, they have a lot of things that they would like to see added, and we will discuss that as we go along with the final revisions on the law, which will probably have to come back for another public hearing, or we'll convene, I'm sure. So I don't think we'll be having a decision there today.
No, I don't think so either.
I'd like to open the floor for public comment.
Good evening, Jay Kopstein. I don't think we should wait. I think we have to go with the moratorium. I don't know what the DEP says. Perhaps that should have been looked at before tonight's meeting was put on the agenda. There are some major issues. The moratorium should be more restrictive, not less restrictive, not loosen it from what we have now. At the planning board and prior discussions here at the town board, for example, what does the word fully mean when it says fully screened? That's like Bill Clinton, what it is. fully means 100%. And if you drive around to some of the large scale that have already been built, they are not fully screened. You can see them from the road. Well, let's go with the moratorium. And on another matter, I know that you've got a lot of literature there, a lot of correspondence. Post it online so that the rest of us can do some research and look at it and see what the comments are, so we know why something may or may not be changed. As Adam was talking about making changes, if they're going to be based on correspondence, post the correspondence so that we can read it. Thank you.
Our comments are posted online. If you go under pending project, you'll see them there.
Thank you.
And I will also say, Jay, that we are here today because we want to strengthen it. We wouldn't be looking for a moratorium to loosen it. And that's the major thing here. We're concerned about, the effects and also the aesthetics as well.
Okay, but you've already said you may have to put the vote off tonight because of DEP.
Well, to strengthen the law, and I'll talk to Adam about that, because actually the law will come back. The moratorium we may be able to put into effect.
There's two things. There's the moratorium so we can look at the law. That's the whole point of the moratorium.
Then do the moratorium and don't delay it for another 2 weeks.
We're waiting for people's comments, and then we're going to make a decision. And just to be clear, the comments are online. So,
Larry?
Good evening, Larry Killian.
Hello. It's no minutes.
Yeah, no.
But I'll be brief.
That's sweet of you.
It's hard. It's hard to imagine how the solar law, just revised in 2020, could have so many problems and be in a need of a moratorium. The New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA, has more than 30 pages of advice for towns revising their laws, and they offer a stark warning about moratoria to avoid the risk of being challenged and voided by the courts. And I quote, "A moratorium does not apply to approved projects where the developer has completed construction or completed substantial construction," end quote. So the projects that people are complaining about, they're not, as seems to be indicated here, they're not going to be affected by the moratorium. And so I would concur that the certificates of occupancy, that needs to be removed. Also, I would suggest that you be more explicit in explaining the reasons for the moratorium. Where are the plans for the fire departments detailing how they will fight electrical fires? That's a concern raised by the New York City DEP. Is this one of the examples of safety and health and so forth? Where is the analysis of the runoff from the panels so they will not damage our watershed? This, again, is in that DEP letter. And is that one of the concerns? The solar panels are up already and water is running off. So that needs to be addressed. How could a law be enacted that apparently in practice does not allow projects to go into operation? There were on the list of comments available for this meeting, there were reports from the town planning board and the county planning board, but they were, for some reason, gone yesterday and the day before and today from the website. And I would agree with Jay, those other communications should be posted and we should be able to see them. I would support a moratorium only if you would pledge to take a very different approach to how we are going to talk about the revision of the law. You should make public for the discussion the reports, analyses, and options. There's a wealth of information, more than 30 pages in the NYSERDA advice. It all goes to the use of the word shall and may. Your shall for the screening and may for a whole series of other things. For example, NYSERDA suggests saying shall, requiring evergreen trees of at least 6 feet in height at the time of planting for screening. So why, that would seem to be a win-win. The law says to prioritize fields without trees, but there's no mechanism in the law to put that in effect. And the law gives enormous power to the planning board to set standards. There are all sorts of reports and analyses and so forth required, but there are no standards to say, well, this is good, this is bad. In order for the moratorium period to be productive, there needs to be a change in how you operate. There should be a series of work sessions scheduled with the opportunity for residents to speak, where the needed analyses, reports, and options are presented and discussed. Stakeholders such as the town's Climate Smart Committee and Yorktown 100 should be full partners in the effort. If you make the process more public, you are going to get a much better law, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. So, John,
More public than this?
I'm gonna ask you to come up, John Tegeter, just to address some of the things that go through planning board. But Larry, this whole process is exactly what you had. I think you remember the tree law that we enacted. Many hearings, public meetings, lots of input. There are definitely experts within our conservation board, within our planning board, within our local, like our 100 group and our Climate Smart Community Task Force. 2 of the members there are very, very involved with solar. So trust me, that's what this whole process is about. We wouldn't be sitting here tonight if this wasn't the end goal.
And I just want to name, like, I hear what you're saying, and I also hear this craving for, like, more public knowledge, posting it online, getting more feedback, and I love all of that. And I volunteer on a lot of boards, and I know that there's many of us that do. And what happens is when we start to do that, I end up doing work for those that actually don't want to do the fight. Right? Like, for instance, I fundraise for those who actually don't want to do the fundraising, but they want me to fundraise so that the bill is less for their children. So when you say, like, put it out there for the public, I feel like we've put it out for the public, and they can all attend these meetings, and there's emails and ways to call us, and I know people call me on my cell phone, and I just feel like leadership, and whether it's in your home, whether it's in government, whether, I don't know, maybe it's not this way in everyone else's political view, but when we make the offering, it is up to the other person also to step in and come and bring their voices. And I love putting it online, but you're gonna get keyboard warriors who are gonna make a lot of noise. And at the end of the day, when you ask them to show up and participate, Dan, they're not carrying an orange bag with you to clean up the Yorktown, right? But they all say they're gonna come online. So I just wanna name, like, I love this, and maybe this has nothing to do with solar, but that thing about public, like, it's out there. It's also for us as parents, as friends, as neighbors, to invite others to step in and tell them that they equally matter and to come to these meetings. I attend other people's town board meetings that are not on Tuesday, and when it matters, people show up. And it's really funny how people will say to me, well, we didn't know about it, but no, you didn't look. So it is public, and it is here, and I invite you guys to bring those outside voices.
Well, that's what tonight's about.
So,
Right, well, that's my
just-
point, but I keep
It goes
hearing
through
this.
this in the planning department also, so let's.
Sorry, John, sorry, John.
But just to be clear.
Great job.
Just to
It's
be,
my therapist hat, sorry.
just to be clear, tonight is not about the actual solar law. Tonight, it's about the moratorium. That's what we're trying to discuss. So, I'd like to stay focused on that, and whether we're going to add COs or not, that's what we're here to talk about. There's going to be plenty of time to bring your suggestions about the actual law. We're not there yet. John?
Well, what would you like me to describe?
The process in
Sorry.
planning board,
My
where,
fault.
with a solar. with
Okay, the
fire
process is,
department.
the process is like many site plans and special permits. A owner or contract vendee makes an applicant for a special permit for a solar array. It goes through the process, it goes through SECRA. It's reviewed by the planning department. It's all referred out to all interested and involved agencies, which include outside the town agencies such as DEP or DEC, and all in-town agencies such as the engineering department, the conservation board, et cetera, et cetera. We look as deeply as we do any site plan at stormwater and how to handle stormwater. All of the approved solar applications that are approved have stormwater measures as part of their construction requirements. Some of them have basins, which you see with the subdivision. All the water flows to the basin. The basin holds the water. It either infiltrates or exfiltrates slowly. There are measures on some of the slopes within the solar array to slow the water down as it's running off. There is plantings that take place under and between the arrays in order to, there's several reasons for that, but one of them is to slow down runoff. The visual impact is looked at in detail. Now, there's a difference between the requirement for view sheds from commercial and within commercial zones as opposed to residential. The word shall shows up when you are viewing it from a residential property. I will acknowledge to you that parsing those words out has led us to where we are today, and I have no reason to argue that point. I think that it's a reasonable point to make, but it is not taking into account the intent, and the intent is to screen them fully from the neighbors, not necessarily the neighbors across the valley. I don't think anybody can reasonably think that that is possible to do. So there will be, in some cases, the ability to view them and see them. We will, and the planning board takes great pains to minimize that to the greatest extent that they can. There is one that is about to come online that people can see from a very highly traveled road. I would remind everybody that you are viewing that from a commercial zone. And the requirement there is to the greatest extent practicable, which we believe has been done. There have been, on that particular project, as all of the others, great pains to plant trees in order to screen. That particular project, all of the trees there, if you took a walk around the fence, and by the way, it does have a fence around it, which is normal, but also aids in the screening. All of the plantings there are the 6 to 8 feet high or even higher. There is a large amount of trees on that particular one that we're talking about, but I will then ask you to realize that planting them at 6 feet, sometimes they're not mature yet, and those will grow sometimes to 30 feet. So the effectiveness of the screening will take place in 3 to 5 years, and we've had those discussions in depth that we are attempting to choose a screening material that grows quickly so that you have a 3 to 5 year window that it will become mature and then at its maximum effectiveness. So that particular one that I think everybody has looked at will continue to hide itself as time goes on a little bit.
I was actually there today, and I was
Yeah.
surprised at how much has grown up on that bottom
Yes.
corner.
Right.
So it's definitely take effect. I think all the water, all the rain, that quite a bit.
Right. And I will also share with you that both myself and all the members of my department and the planning board, I believe, share everyone's concern about visual aspects of solar panels. We have all experienced other installations in other municipalities that have really failed miserably at thinking about what those impacts are. We haven't failed miserably about thinking about those impacts, and we're being very diligent to address them on every project. But as I said, certain vantage points, reasonably, you have to expect that it's impossible. So that wording, yes, I understand about it, and it should be addressed. But I will tell you that the planning board has taken great care in doing the best that they can with the screening material. And I also want to mention that the first revision of the solar law after its original adoption included a yearly inspection of all that screening material and the requirement to replace it if portions of it are dying or failing.
Gotcha.
So that's in the law, and so whether or not that is recited within any resolution or approving documents matters not. It's in the law to do that, but we are reciting them in the approval of documents when we.
Well, to a lot of your points, that's I think why we stepped in and we want this moratorium, so this way we could look at, what fully screened means, because, I mean, does fully screened means like when you fly over it that you can't see it? I mean, is it completely invisible? I mean, certain things are just unreasonable interpretations, but we do want to make sure that we do a better job of screening, to your point. So, and I think that's why we're here tonight, and that's why we want to put this moratorium in place, so we can go over those points, and other. I mean, I got a list of things that I'd like to see as part of a revised law, which are not, for discussion tonight. Tonight is, do we do the moratorium and how do we do it?
And also, I would like to point out that there have been some applications that have moved through the process but were withdrawn, and at least 2 of them were withdrawn because they did not receive really a warm reception from the planning board. And much of that was because of their position and the inability to really make them look appropriate to where they were going.
So, look, and I have a concern too. I know the visual is a big part of it, but really, how is the runoff? What is the water? How close to the borders? The setbacks from that area. So there are a lot of things that health-wise that we're concerned about. But I will say, the question was asked if something was enacted in 2020, why would we be looking at 4 years later? There's been a tremendous amount of change, first of all, and not only solar and solar storage, like battery storage, but in actually what we're seeing from 2020 when there were really, I think we had 1 solar project up and running.
That's correct. And of course, it's really a brand new land use, at least for Yorktown.
Yep.
They've been used in the southwest, of course. You can see them from miles away in the southwest. But it's definitely a brand new land use, and so there's some learning, and we're attempting to learn and make it better.
And I will give kudos to the town board and also our planning board, because, to take it to step back and say, whoa, let's take a look, let's slow it down, pump the brakes, and let's make sure we have everything right, is really what good governance is all about. So.
And one last thing that I want to just point out is in terms of the priorities sites, there's been 6 that are now approved by the planning board. 4 of those are on open fields. Not completely open fields. We found that nearly all of them have to take down some trees, because when you get closer to a border, there's shading issues. Sometimes the fields that an active farm wants to give up for solar isn't enough to make the project work, so you need a little bit more. So those things have happened. But certainly in terms of priorities, 4 of these things are on either active farms or former farms, and in open field situations, not forested areas.
Sure. I remember one on Baptist Church that was, they used the top of the barns, they used the house, and they had a field.
That's correct.
Had to take down a few trees.
They had to take down a few trees in an area that they selected, which they're able to do.
just so everybody knows, I did a walkthrough with John on one of these, and your team does a very, very thorough job on all the water runoff, the shading. You know, I was very impressed with how your whole team. It brought a lot of questions that to me that I never even thought about. You know, but just want to give you guys a little kudos.
Yeah, thank you.
You've only been doing it like 30-something years.
I'd like to ask a question if
It
that's
feels like 60 or
permittable.
70, to be honest.
Absolutely. Mr.
Okay, John, you were mentioning the fencing and the trees and what have you. Would you mind letting our audience know where this location is so they can see what to anticipate should a solar array come to their neighborhood? Is it not a secret, right?
No, it's not a secret. No. I'm happy to tell you, yeah. You can see it from Route 6 at the corner of Hill and Route 6.
Oh, that
Okay.
between East Main
Yes.
Street and Route 6?
Yeah.
Right. So you're looking across.
They don't have the arrays down yet, do they?
Yeah, the arrays are there.
Oh, okay.
And in this case, so let me preface this by saying I'm an architect, so visual stuff works different in my brain than a lot of other folks' brains. Okay, so what you see from there is it's a slope that bends down towards the road.
Yeah, it's
So you're-
raised.
Right. So you're really seeing the top of the panels. Okay.
I don't think you'd see them at all from Route 6, to be honest. East Main Street, perhaps.
Well, you see them from Route 6 if you're at the light, as you're passing through the light at Hill Boulevard. Okay. You can see them a little bit from Hill Boulevard. Again, commercial zone. The really terrible view, and which I've seen on some other projects in other municipalities, is when you see the undercarriages of them. It's spindly legs. It looks terrible.
Erector set?
Overgrown grass.
Erector set, yeah.
Yeah.
So, as an architect, I'm telling you that it's a little bit less impactful to see the top of the panels, in my opinion.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Anyone else to come up and chat? Well,
Deputy Supervisor, members of the board, for the record, David Cooper, partner with the law firm Mazarin and Steinmetz. Here representing several clients, all in the throes of either construction or processing applications before the planning board on solar arrays. Let me just kind of skip to the chase or get to the chase because you guys have gone through it. I do want to talk about the moratorium itself. Two pieces. One is the proposal to prevent any C of Os from being issued at this point. So those are projects that have already gone through the rigmarole, which has your
and we agree with you there 100%.
Okay, so we're heartened at that. Obviously, you've read our letter from IBM. I also want to shift gears for a second and talk about applicants that are processing applications before the planning board. In some of you were at the planning board last night. As you know, one of our clients, Freestone Renewables, has kicked off a proposal. And to date has been very responsive to a lot of the comments that the planning board has issued, that the town has brought up in the initial review with respect to visual, with respect to stormwater, et cetera. It has been an iterative process, and I think it will continue to be an iterative process. We do urge the town board at this point to put language in the moratorium that would allow applicants to continue processing the applications before the planning board at their own risk. No issue of building permit, no issue of approvals, but let them go forward. A couple of reasons why. One, these are investors in renewable energy. The town should be praised for being at the forefront, particularly in Westchester County, in this type of development. But don't penalize those investors as they try to come up with the right plans and really work with you. Second, I think it'll be informative for your board as you're looking at the code and seeing, okay, what do we need to tweak, what do we need to adjust? If an applicant is going through the process in real time and you see some of the items that might come up, how it could be resolved. So what I'd leave you with tonight is, if the board does adopt the moratorium, please don't stop cold what's going before the planning board. Obviously the applicant will acknowledge it's at our own risk, but allow us to continue processing so that we don't stop that momentum.
I believe that was already addressed and in a positive light,
Yeah.
so I don't think that that's an issue.
I think that's how writers came to all of our contracts, right? It's like you live it, you breathe it, you understand it, and then you grow with it.
I will tell you, your applicant last night, I was impressed. They voluntarily increased, yeah, they listened, they voluntarily increased their own buffer. From 20 to 80 feet, which allowed more buffering, allowed more trees to stay, even at the detriment of its own project. And not to get into the law, but I'd like to see something like an increased buffer in part of the new law, so this way you don't have everything right at the edge. But anyway, yes, thank you. I appreciate your comments on the moratorium.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mark Lieberman, Wall Street. So as a former project manager, when you have a situation and you find flaws in the law that you have found, and you have a lot of possible solutions to the flaws, and you've come up with a 6-month time frame as your moratorium period, that implies you have a project plan that's going to take 6 months. So can you explain the key steps of your project plan and why those steps will take 6 months? Thank you.
So just briefly, Mark, it's like any of the processes with our town laws. They go out for opinion from our department heads as well as some outside agencies. We put that together. They come through the attorney. We draft a law. We bring it to meetings. We have public input. We then take that, change that, and see whatever changes come in from the public. And that's the process that has always been followed and will always be followed.
So you lay that out as a project?
That is a process that we have for every law that comes through here.
So it's funny that you say that because I come from construction, which you know, and it's a different wild, wild west when it comes to municipal law. Like, I didn't realize. I mean, even when we open up the road, I tell Dave, the road's open, let's do everything. And then he goes, you can't. It's got to close it and then go file another RFP. They got to open it again. And I'm like, but the road is open. We can do so much with it right now. It's open. So it's funny. So I hear what you're saying about how it's projected. I think the plan here might not actually be a 6-month or a turnaround based on holding costs and all that great stuff that you and I probably did together. But it definitely does have a vision to keep it moving it through. But I mean, I don't know anything in this world that takes 6 months. Sorry, guys. It's just, I mean, I think that's one of the most frustrating parts of being up here. It's like, I'm like, this doesn't operate like the world out there. And it's because of all the approvals and keeping everything transparent and open and all of that other stuff. But yeah, I yell at Dave a lot. I'm like, dude, we could do a lot. We could change the sewer, the traps, the pipes, put the lines underneath the ground. He's like, no, I am here to put.
Listen, we just did boring out on Old Compound Road the last 2 days. That's where we're at. So the hope is that culvert will be able to be replaced between the June to September time frame that the trout are not spawning, because
So
the
we have to wait for
DEP,
them, too.
yes, the DEP and the DEC will not let you work from September through the beginning of June.
So, I mean, for me, it's funny dinner conversations because they're like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, don't talk to me about it. Just give me anxiety.
So, Mark,
But thanks, Mark.
in order to put a moratorium in place, you have to, allocate a reasonable amount of time. That's really how it works. And so we're estimating that 6 months is, like, you can't put a moratorium in place forever, indefinitely, because that's frowned upon and you can't do it. And so we're guesstimating that it's going to be about 6 months. Can it be a month? Sure. Can it be 4 months? Sure. Can it be 5 months? Sure. It depends on how many meetings we're going to have, how many hearings we're going to have, and as we step through the process, how quickly we get responses back from referrals. It's not a definitive process like you're going to do X, Y, and Z, and X is going to take 2 minutes and Z is going to take 5 minutes. It's just not that kind of process, and you have the public involved.
Okay, so it sounds fairly vague, the process, and the concern is I stand with the developers over here. They're not going to know the cost impact. They're not going to be able to predict their cost impact if you're not certain.
So, Mark, everything we do has to be put out for public notice. Everything, what is it, 30 days on a law for the comments to come back?
It all depends on when that board or whatever meets.
Yeah, that's true too.
So it's their schedule as
Conservation
well.
meets once.
They meet once a month,
Right.
sometimes they meet twice a month, so it all
Right.
depends on that board.
So there's a lot in the process, and I think that all the attorneys that are speaking about it understand that process because they're municipal attorneys. And, you know, it's much different than the corporate world, where you could just say,
Or
this is what I want to
residential.
do, and let's move. The municipal law has its determinations that we have to follow, and it's a very important aspect, because if you do it wrong, then you open the town up for a lawsuit in Article 78. So we will do it right, we will follow the processes, and we think 6 months is reasonable. That's what they look at for moratorium. And if we need to extend that, we could look at that in 6 months. But the most important thing is we get it right for the town, and that's where we're going.
I'm just making sure that
the
we vote
process, the process is defined. It's defined in municipal law. So it's not a vague process. It's very definitive. And
So-
those are the steps you have to step through.
Yep, thank you. Next speaker. I know you've been waiting to get up there.
Thanks.
Jump.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak, and also thanks for taking a really thoughtful approach to this process. I will speak about the moratorium. Quickly, I wanted to respond to
I'm
something.
sorry, could
What's
you
your name?
introduce yourself?
Hey, my name is Brian Rosenblatt.
Brian.
I want to quickly speak about something that I think his name was John said. You know, one thing on screening that I think is critical is just from the adjacent residential property, fully screened, I think means fully screened. And I think we can distinguish that from a road.
Yeah.
Right, in a commercial district. Really a big purpose of, you know, the law and those restrictions is because you're taking what's an industrial use and you're potentially putting it in a residential or rural area. And I think that's something the planning board just needs to think about, hopefully during this moratorium period. I'm here to advocate for adopting the moratorium as is, you know, with the one caveat. I think it is persuasive and equitable to make the change to permit C of Os. You know, given the amount of, you have someone at the end of their project and they're waiting to flip
A lot
the
of
switch.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of investment. So I think that does make a ton of sense. But allowing the review process to continue while during the moratorium, like that really only looks at it from the perspective of the developer and not the residents or neighbors of this town. It's going to cause residents and neighbors to attend planning meetings, consult experts, and expend resources, like to really safeguard their views and to advocate when it's at a time where we don't really know what the future of large-scale solar in Yorktown looks like. And that doesn't really seem equitable to residents when we're really trying to figure out what the law is. And then the last thing I just ask the town to consider as they go through the moratorium process is I don't want to impede and think the town should impede progress in any sense, but you know, there are significant environmental costs associated with cutting down thousands and thousands of trees in order to develop solar, and there's a trade-off there, and really got to weigh that trade-off, both from an environmental perspective as well as you know, preserving the tranquility of this town. So, that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Brian.
Pretty good point. Why don't you guys flip a coin?
Hey, Paul, Dan was here before you today.
You could do odds evens.
Hello, Paul Moskowitz. I'm a member of the Town of Yorktown Community Energy Task Force, the CSC, which was formed by Matt Slater when he first took office. We have been successful in getting New York State certification of the town as a climate smart community town. We have been working more recently on solar energy for town-owned buildings and charging stations, also on town-owned property. So we are in favor of solar energy in general. We have not written a memo. You've got memos from some committees who are more up to date than we are. But we did bring up some subjects during our discussion. And I'll just mention a couple of them. Does it make sense
to cut down mature forests for large-scale solar installations? Or does it make sense to install industrial installations, such as large-scale solar, in residential areas? So these are questions that I hope that the town board will deal with, and you should be hearing from us.
Great, thank you.
Great. I have been talking to Sarah and Sparnoff about this, and
Very good.
and I'm hoping that we get some comments back.
You're certainly invited to our meetings.
I know that. I usually have a conflict, but I'll try to sign in from my other meeting this week.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Dan Strauss, 58-year resident. Ms. Howitt, you hit the nail right on the head tonight. You hit the nail right on the head. If more people came to the meetings, they would know what goes on. And I'm going to go back 2 years where this board had an opportunity to write a law that would not benefit certain individuals. They had the opportunity to write a solar law after an applicant clear-cut trees, and I'm even going to say that some of the attorneys here tonight, maybe they should have been here through all the meetings here and all the meetings at the planning board. The process where people are called experts. Who are the experts on the planning board? Are they experts in planning? They're volunteers who do a job as members of the planning board. Do they listen to the conservation board? Absolutely not. There are boards here in town that do wonderful work, and they get no listen to at all, and I've made comments about that. I've been to meetings where they recommend certain things, and then 2 weeks later, it's out the window. I refute what Mr. Tegeter said, a lot of what he said. Commercial solar farms, that was the issue 2 years ago. Solar farms in commercial or in residential. You wrote the law so that the Jefferson Valley project, which is a major issue today about screening, you allowed them to make a solar farm because they couldn't have another residential use. I went to the meetings. And then you made it okay for the Foothill Foothill property to do their project. You wrote the law explicitly so that after someone had clear cut on Underhill Avenue, and it was a whole issue, we shouldn't allow these solar farms, large scale, in Yorktown. But then the law was written to allow those. But now you want to put a moratorium.
Mm-hmm.
Now you want to. The late Tom Diana wanted to do a moratorium when you were talking about the solar law. He wanted to do it. It's on the record.
Mm-hmm.
And no one else, all of a sudden, he changed his tune because two developers, and you will look at me like you say I look at you. It's on the record. All of what I am saying is on the record. He came, changed his tune, then the solar law got changed so that, or written, so that those projects could go through because they didn't have a use. They couldn't do residential. Mr. Tegater tonight mentioned a project that is visible. He then said it's in commercial zone. That was the issue then. But now you want to do a moratorium. Why didn't you do the moratorium then? Why now? That's my question. The process. Why now? You made the comment, Ms. Howitt. People don't know what goes on. It's all 2 years ago. No one knows in this room what, except for a handful of people. They don't know what transpired. The attorneys for that property, the Dell property, that's a big issue. And I've talked at that planning, I don't know if you know, I talked at the planning board meeting. I talked at that meeting about screening. Mr. Steinmetz, he tried to spin the screening. Oh, is it fully screened or not? You know why it didn't go through? Because the client who was against it, and then I found out there were people at Random, I believe it's Random Farms. They got up all of a sudden, and one of them said, "Thank you, Dan, for talking about it." But he hired an attorney from New York. That's why. The process is flawed. It's a flawed process on this and some other things. But I get very aggravated, to say the least. To say the least, when I hear certain things said, and then all of a sudden it gets turned around. Is a moratorium good? Sure, it's great. It should have been done 2 years ago. Then you wouldn't have the eyesore. And in your article, Mr. Esposito, you made a comment in your weekly article in the newspaper. At the end of your article, you said, "Oh, and they're so ugly."
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate
Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan. Dan, honestly, it's lessons learned.
I'm not sure what it had to do with the moratorium.
It's lessons learned. You know, I wasn't here 2 years ago, but I'm just saying. But as a whole, and that's what John was saying before. It's lessons learned. You know, so this is why we're talking about a moratorium. It's lessons learned.
Hard lessons to be learned.
Yeah.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Susan.
Susan Siegel. As someone who's been urging the town board to revisit the solar law regarding large-scale installations for more than 2 years, I find myself in a difficult position tonight. The moratorium that's the subject for this hearing is to give the town board more time to consider the amendments. That sounds good. The problem is, what concerns me is why the town board needs 6 months to come up with those amendments to address the problems when you've known about these problems for a long, long time. Like achieving a better balance between encouraging solar, but not at the expense of cutting down hundreds of trees that you know also provide many benefits. This issue was brought up in 2022 when you last revisited the law, as that's a correction of what a previous statement that said it was last revised in 2020. You revised it, your board revised it minus you, Pat, in 2022. At the last time, and you considered the law, there were several suggestions that were made to limit the amount of tree removal, some that you've heard again tonight, but they were all ignored. And even the comment that was made about the Colangelo subdivision that's currently, working its way through, how they increased their buffer to reduce the number of trees, but we still, last night, a planning board meeting, there was no number of how many trees will come down even with the modified plan. So tree removal remains a big issue. The other problem is the screening issue. The town board has known about that issue since at least 2022, when the Dell proposal was first made, and then again in March of 2023, when he came back again. So you've known about these problems for a long time, and you haven't done anything about it, okay? You've had months and months and months, okay? Nothing was done. Given this failure, and the fact that there are now 2 applications pending, both of which involve massive tree removal and screening. There's little choice, but we have to support the moratorium, okay? But we can only hope that during the next 6 months, there's going to be some serious town board discussions, open discussions about how you would plan to address the problem, okay? These discussions should take place at open meetings and before you draft the text and before the public hearing is scheduled. And I say that because next week there were 2 public hearings on 2 very important laws, ethics and ATV e-bike legislation. That text was never discussed at an open town board session. The text was just presented to the public. Here it is. We have no idea what went into the town board's thinking when those laws were put together. So when you get to the time when you're going to discuss the solar law, I encourage you to please have open discussions, work with your staff, present different options. Tree removal is an issue. You have many different ways of dealing with it. Discuss it, go back and forth. These are work sessions. The public doesn't have to participate, but they can hear, and then they can comment, as you said.
How are they going to hear it? I don't.
If it's an open discussion.
But Susan, you're going to have to live with me.
No, Luciana.
Because,
Actually,
like-
Susan, if you would remember, Mr. Harrington came in and gave a presentation, and Jim
there are
Materano
things that
Sr. came in and gave a presentation. Yes, he
No,
did.
but the ethics board comments were never discussed by this board. The comments were
Right,
made
okay.
that the
And
ethics
thank
that
you.
the
Jay-
ethics.
Jay's absolutely right.
You have to
This
keep
is-
your
this is
comments to
not-
the moratorium.
Right. This is moratorium.
I've been saying that all
All
night.
I'm saying is that when you get to the point, I'm supporting the moratorium because
Yep,
there's no choice.
thank you.
We need that. But what I'm saying is when you discuss when you get to
Susan,
the point
I've already
where you're
stated that
discussing,
we will be having
it should
all of the
be
meetings
at
in
an,
public.
it should be at
Susan,
an
are there
open-
any changes you'd like to make to the existing moratorium
I will
text that
give
we have
those
now?
to you when you get to it. I'm saying.
Well, we're here.
I don't.
We're not talking about the
not
we're not talking about the solar law. We're talking tonight. We're talking
That's right.
about
No, I'm not
the
in-
moratorium.
You've made
That's
the,
what
the
we're
one
talking about.
You have not stopped other people from commenting about
No.
what they want.
Nobody's trying to stop you.
Well, all I'm saying.
I don't think.
All
think
I'm
so.
saying is
Please,
that
no comments from the floor like that, Maura.
6
Please,
months from now,
please.
whether it's 1 month from now or 6 months from now, when you're ready to have a draft and to hold a public hearing, I'm saying before you get to that public hearing, the public should know what the board is thinking and what goes into your thinking that led to the piece of paper that was the text for the law.
I
Because
respect-
this is a comment
Look.
that will apply next week. When we have 2 hearings, we were presented drafts, and there was no way the public knew. What did you discuss? Did you want this change? Did you not want that change? You have many options. Just do it in an open meeting, which is all I'm asking. Get the moratorium passed tonight and get to work because you know what the problems are. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, Susan.
And it's been stated quite a few times tonight. Susan, you can sit down. It's been stated quite a few times tonight that this will all be done in public. We will be bringing in the different players from our boards that need to come in and speak about it. To maybe pay a little more attention instead of the knitting, because it's actually I think it's extremely insulting after we say it repeatedly that you come up and say, well, you're not going to do that, and this is what you should do. We have said it repeatedly tonight, repeatedly. So I appreciate what you're saying. Some of the comments, as I said, from the other laws had come through the meetings. They were compiled. Unfortunately, the events of the end of the summer last year and then into Tommy's passing, we are behind the 8 ball on some of this stuff. Absolutely. That's why we're moving it. That's why we're having 2-3 hearings in a night. We really want to get this stuff going and get it going right and be able to spend the time with people coming in with the additional comments and making sure that everyone gets their voice heard.
And
That is the whole process.
I know you want to move on, but I just want to name, the way that I heard it was based on us putting out the text for the moratorium. You would have liked us to have either a open discussion or a red line on how we got to those points to have the moratorium. And I just wanted to say, because I just want to say, I will take this offline with you and you can explain to me. But from this point on, all these learning events will be discussed with you included. But if you want to know how many times we visit the site, how many times we've talked about it, that's when I said to you, like, I mean, I don't know how to, you'd have to be in my pocket because it's all the time. Town work is all the time.
No, you misunderstood. I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. The moratorium law is a cut and dry law. There were no significant issues other than certificate of occupancy
You're
and
talking about
building.
the next 6 months or whatever.
What
it is.
I'm talking about is that when you get to the point where you come and you say, here's the draft of our new proposed solar law. It's going to be a scheduled hearing on September 5th.
And this is why we got here. Okay.
What I'm saying is before you come out with that text, the discussions of how you got to that text should be open, because when you did the ethics law and when you did the ATV law, there was no public discussion. And please don't go back to Mr. Harrington and to Mr. Harrington with
Okay, but I'm just talking
2022.
about moratorium. That's what you mean by that.
That's it. I'm
Thank
talking about the actual text. That's what counts. The moratorium is cut and dry.
I
There's no big
sometimes
issue.
feel very like.
And this is a
attacked
public
about how
hearing
we
on
do
the
things.
moratorium.
That's right.
Please, thank you,
But
Susan.
as other people added other comments,
I
I
understand.
am adding other comments. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Good evening. I'm Peyton Boswell with Woodfield Renewables. I'll keep this very specific to the moratorium, and it relates in particular to the C of O requirement. Just a little context. So my firm, Woodfield Renewables, we partnered with Catherine Honig, who's in the room, and her family right when the last moratorium passed. So this is early 2022. We then spent about a year going through what we felt was a very rigorous and comprehensive and transparent process with the town. I think we had something like 15 or 16 meetings in total between planning board, town board, input from the conservation board, tree commission, the county, et cetera. That culminated in getting full approvals for our project in March of 2023, so about a year ago. We then began to work in good faith, full bore on the actual project. We are now substantially complete with said project, and we anticipate putting that project into service sometime later next month. Our specific, I guess, concern here with the proposed moratorium pertains to the inclusion of that C of O. If that were to be passed, that would cause our project material financial adversity, including a number of our project level contracts having major issues, including our site lease, including our pilot, including our construction financing. So for that reason, we really would recommend that portion of the proposed moratorium be modified so we're not picking up projects that were already approved and causing them undue duress. That's the extent of it. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. And we have received some letters from other job sites that are at that point as well. And we understand your point, and we will discuss that at the end of.
Terrific. Thank you.
Ken, which hat do you have on?
Ken Belfer, citizen Ken Belfer.
Citizen Ken?
Amazon Road, Mohegan Lake. And I'm a citizen who's concerned about climate change. And because of that, I'm a strong supporter of alternative energy sources. And I know there's a lot more I could do personally, but I've driven, for instance, hybrid cars since 2004. And I think all of us and the town should do more. So at first I was concerned to hear about a moratorium. On the other hand, I've heard a lot of the concerns expressed, including concerns about cutting of trees and the kind of environmental paradox there of you're hurting the environment to help the environment. So I understand the reasons for taking a good, strong look and therefore support the moratorium. However, I also think you got to do it in a reasonable way. And so some of the things that have been suggested, like allowing the review processes that have to continue at the developers' own risks, I think it is reasonable. And doing it at their own risk, they understand that they may be proposing something that may not be allowed in the end. But as long as they understand that, to start getting feedback and, you know, from the review professionals in the town, the planning board, about view sheds and stormwater runoff and all the many issues, you know, that John had mentioned get reviewed. I think that's a good idea to make sure that's not precluded by the moratorium. And, you know, again, from I'm not crazy about coming up here taking a pro-development point of view necessarily, but from a point of view of reason, if somebody's been through the review process and gotten site plan approval and, you know, probably moved through construction, you can't say you can't get a C of O now because we've decided to change the law in the future. That just doesn't seem to be reasonable. So I think some reasonable exclusions like that from the moratorium make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
And Ken, we've heard from multiple people about that stuff, financing, including, you know, building, all that stuff. So we have listened to it, and we are hearing it.
Definitely balance. Thank you. Anyone else?
Take your time, Dan.
I just wanted to make a follow-up comment. I don't always make myself clear. Did I talk about the moratorium?
Yes.
No.
I don't believe you did.
Well,
But you can talk about whatever you want.
No,
so.
as specific now as it's become, I'm going to make my feelings known. If the gentleman or whoever is working has a month to put his display into use, I can't see that you would deny that. But as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to cutting trees, you know how I feel about that.
We do.
Any of the other projects, I don't care if they're 3 months in or 6 months in or whatever, they should be excluded. Excluded, in other words, the moratorium should affect them. They should not get a go ahead. It should just be cut. And 6 months, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Any other?
I'm Dennis Fair, PowerFlex project developers for the IBM project.
How are you?
I'm good, thanks. And I want to thank you for being reasonable about it. So I don't want to, take your time going beyond that. But I do want to rise to the defense of your planning department. You have some of the best planning laws in the state. Your planning department is not easy. They're thorough, good rules. It's like, it may not be a moratorium that's required here, but applying the laws that as they're written better. So think about that. I'm not going to tell you the legal side of it. You know that well already. But you really are much more blessed than you realize with a great department, a great set of rules, and maybe you can make it a little bit better. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks to our planning board.
And Dennis, I will say we do know how blessed we are up here. That's why we call them experts. They are a phenomenal group of people who dedicate their time.
Hard working.
And they are very, very knowledgeable, especially our director of planning and his whole team. They do a great job day in and day out. So
And
thank
they're
you.
really good humans.
Anyone else for public comment? Motion to close public comment?
Motion. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, any comments on the moratorium and changes?
So, we are going to talk about the moratorium now, right?
Moratorium, yes.
So,
Solar moratorium.
So, I kind of wish we could go back, somehow put something in the moratorium where we could go back and revisit the projects that have already been approved, just to make sure that there's proper screening and all of that kind of stuff, or additional screening, or something like that. I don't, I'm kind of mixed. I really do think the solar panels are ugly, Dan, and I stand by that statement. But I don't know how we stop projects that are so far advanced in the process.
Yeah, well,
without bringing on a lawsuit.
No, well,
So-
I'm not worried about the lawsuit, honestly. I'm
the right thing
more concerned with it's the right thing for people that have put a lot of time, effort, and money into
A lot of money into it.
Right, and if they followed our law to the point, and they went through planning, and they went through the site review, and they went through the whole process, that's what they are legally bound to do. If they're following the screening laws that are existing, then that is the acceptable thing. So I think anyone who has gone through the process should be able to get their CO if they're in that construction phase. I think that also think that if someone is not through the process and they choose to continue at their own risk, I don't see a problem with that either, because
I'd like to get that in writing, though.
Oh, absolutely. It would be in writing. And you need to realize that it is a long and onerous process. It's not like someone came into town and said, hey, I want to do a solar farm, and boom, they're there. That's not how it works. And I think that there are a couple people in the audience who would definitely agree with me there. It takes a while, and it's a long process. It's a lot more than the 6-month moratorium, and it's up to us to really bring in the players that need to come in, hear from the public, and see what changes and tweaks need to happen. I know Sergio wants to see some things. I'd like to see some things, and I'm sure that all of our departments that have to do with trees, conservation, energy, our Climate Smart Community Task Force, there's going to be quite a bit of information coming in, and we need to vet that properly, and then rely on our attorney to get us a nice red-line law that we could present. So, any other? Adam, do you have anything, or?
No, I just want to be clear is there a consensus on what changes we want to make? Removing COs, we're going to allow projects to move forward for review, or no?
I think that anyone who's in the process that they've passed planning and they're building, they need to be able to get their CO. So that's fine, and I have, as long as we have it, as Patrick stated, and I'm sure it is, it's a documentation they'll have to sign off on, that, hey, this is at your own risk. The law might change. You may be required for different setbacks and different procedures.
So then you want to allow review processes to move forward as long as folks sign some waiver acknowledgement
At
of
their
risks?
Correct.
Their risk.
Yeah, that would be one thing. I think to Dan's point, I think what Dan was trying to say is there are certain projects that are more advanced in the process, and is there a way to draw a line in the sand, I guess? Is that's what you were talking about?
Like, they should be not subjected to these new rules.
I mean, and then you have,
so close to the finish line.
it gets.
You can't cherry pick.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, well, look, the IBM solar canopy is really not ground-mounted solar. So.
Planning approval, no planning approval. I think that's your line in the sand.
I think so.
I really think that's your line in the sand. If they've
I've-
gone through the planning, John, do you have any input on this you'd like to come up, or?
I was tempted to call out from the back, but I know I would be admonished for that, so.
Yes.
No, in our memo, we stated that really, we recommend, it's the planning approval is the cutoff point, which is the fairest, I think, situation. They've gone through, they've gained approval, and that's what's sensible.
Thank you. So, is everyone in concurrence with that?
I am. If it's approved, they did the due diligence, the finance.
Well, if they followed the law as it's stated,
Exactly.
past that point, that's where.
Yeah. and this is why we're having a moratorium, to tighten up that law going forward.
Yep.
You know?
Lou?
No, I'm all for that.
Serge?
I'll concur.
Okay. So, Adam, if we can make those changes, and is there anything else that we'd like to address at this point in the moratorium?
I think that's it. I think we should put it in place. Oh, wait, John's got a question.
Please introduce yourself.
That's a statement walk, not a question walk.
I don't know, don't recall if the law requires a statement from an applicant acknowledging the existence of the moratorium and that they proceed at their own risk, that may be added as a requirement.
That's what I understood them to be saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay.
started with that,
Okay.
with this,
And
yeah.
I apologize.
That's okay.
In writing.
Clear.
John, I like being double checked. All right, so can I have a motion to pass the moratorium with the changes made?
No, you can't, no. Can't do
No?
that,
Can't do it yet?
I gotta wait till it's drafted.
Oh, okay, well, then let's put it
Move
on.
on from that.
Yep, we'll move on then. We will convene a public hearing to consider a proposed local law known as the smoke shop moratorium. And, we're losing our solar people. There's our postings. So in here, we're looking at a moratorium on smoke shops as coming into town. This is precipitated by a smoke shop, or as they called it, a smoke and candy shop that had opened up next to Starbucks. Our police, doing great police work, went in, did some undercover operations, only to find out, thank you, only to find out that they were selling marijuana and selling to underage patrons. Unfortunately, the Office of Cannabis Management in New York State has, I believe it's 16 investigators for the entire state of New York. They are the only ones who can close down a cannabis shop. But due to tax laws, believe it or not, and them having products that were untaxed, in addition to breaking their special use permit, we were able to pull their special use permit through the building department. Our police did have to wait for the state taxation people to come in, only to find out they were selling cigarettes and other items that were not properly purchased and taxed through the New York State system. They didn't have the New York tax stamps on them. I think it's a shame that we weren't able to do it based on the fact that they're selling drugs to our children. Whether marijuana is legal or not in New York State, it has to be sold in a specific way. We specifically do not have shops able to sell cannabis and marijuana in our town. We opted out of that and continue to believe, at least myself, that is a strong policy for us to uphold because of our children and their future and because of the town and our quality of life. We do have two letters that came in, one from the planning board. Planning board has no objection and taking action to review the law. And the same with our Westchester County Planning Board referral. They believe that it's done in the right and reasonable way, and it's consistent with the criteria set up for looking at a moratorium. Adam, am I missing anything?
No, and it's similar to the one we just went over. It's a 6-month moratorium on any approvals for smoke or vape shops, which is defined in the law. Basically, anything that's selling tobacco-related products as its primary purpose.
Very good. Any comments from the floor?
Jake Hopstein. Chief Noble gave a presentation a couple of weeks ago. He said what had to be said. I would hope you move the question tonight and not delay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Any other comments? Okay, we'll close public comment. Motion?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So, from the board, I will lead off by saying I lived in Yorktown for 30 years now. My wife, I can't tell you how many years she's lived here since she was born here, and she'll kill me. Other than a couple of years she was out of town. My daughter, born and raised here. This is not the Yorktown that I want to see, and it's been a proliferation of them popping up. We don't really get a full fix. Like the other one was a candy store, and it was.
Wonder what kind of candy.
It was just very. I looked in their window after they were closed, and it was a head shop. It was vape, and an aisle of candy in the middle of tables full of candy, and I'm like, next to a dance studio. So I personally would like to see our PD, some of the other people, Alliance for Safe Kids. There's definitely some groups that work with our youth, get some comments and really try to craft something that not only is restrictive to where they can open in comparison to schools, children's activities, religious institutions.
Just limited as much as can.
Right. But also, I would, and I don't know if this is, something we could draft into this, Adam, as home rule. I would like to see a one and done policy. You're caught selling to minors, selling drugs that are not part of your process. I would like to see their special use permit pulled. And
You couldn't do that with this
can't.
now. That would be
Not with the
something we could-
moratorium.
Yeah.
I'm talking with the law when we get back to that.
Well, we can discuss and.
Okay, I just want to make sure there's an understanding for the audience and audience at home, what we are looking at and why this is an issue. I know that everyone was brought up to speed on this by Chief Noble, as Jay pointed out. We also all received the police reports in our emails, so we're pretty well versed on where this went and what happened, so. Serge, I know you and Lou have young kids in town.
Yeah, no, I just, it's really something that I think we need to move the moratorium here on this tonight, so this way nothing else kind of pops up. And yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the law, I think there are ways that we could limit, like clustering of these things, like happened on Commerce Street. You got one across the street, you got one here, you got one that's popping up somewhere else. And they're all within walking distance of each other. We don't need that. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do creatively with the law, but it starts with the moratorium tonight, so we could stop, anything from popping up until we get our hands around it, wrap our heads around it. That's where I'm at.
I'm all for children learning how to make smart choices. I don't believe you take it away. I believe that you teach them how to say no. But the way that these rose glasses are coming up in these smoke shops and what they're offering and how they're luring and all that false, I don't think that we're mature enough to be able to say no. And after much review of other neighboring towns, they found that the pop-up was coming extreme, and what they also did was they went straight to limiting it within regions, whether it was that there was a school, whether it was that there was a daycare, whether it was just so that it makes it a little bit harder for them to be able to think through before they go and make bad choices. And I think the moratorium is the first start for us to actually have a really good look at it, because it is something about, we talk about walkability, we talk about how beautiful Yorktown is, and nobody wants to walk around the same, just like we always complain about the pizza shops or the whatnot. We don't want this to turn into a smoke shop place either. So I think that, and what was happening in that store is just a hard no for me. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Mine is this, basically, I'm for the moratorium, and it's like with the solar panels, it's lessons learned. We didn't know that they were going to all of a sudden mushroom up all over the place, so I think now we just put the moratorium in there, and then we craft better legislation and we implement it.
Unfortunately, the changes in the law in New York State.
Yeah, the state office.
Sort of
Well, we
pushed
can
this
craft
to the
around it,
precipice here. Yeah. So I don't think it's so much a reaction time per se as much as this is coming tumbling down the cliff really fast. And we saw them just boom, boom, spring up. That's they get a building permit as a store, retail store, and then what they move to is a whole different story. So I'd love to pass this today. Adam, we're good with that?
Yes.
As is? Oh, okay. So we closed the public comment, but we did not close the public hearing, so motion to close the public hearing.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana. It's good to have a master clerk here. And also, just on a quick note, I forget who made the comment about the postings online, but Diana's been doing a great job with that. She did see why there might have been an issue finding it, so you please contact her office, and I'm sure you're going to look at it too.
Yeah, when we first post them, they post them all together, so you have to scroll down. When we get them in piecemeal, which happens sometimes, you'll see it posted separately.
So, all right.
But they are there.
Yeah. Can you folder it, or? All right.
You probably could, but it's on our website. We'll take
Okay.
a look at it. Maybe
Sure.
it is.
All right. So can I have a motion on the moratorium?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. So now we will move over to Toll Brothers, Inc. for petition for a zoning map amendment.
And now for something completely different.
You have a different hat on.
Yeah, well, I meant from the last discussion.
Yeah.
That too. Good evening, members of the board. Good to see you again, David Cooper, partner with the law firm of Aaron Steinmetz, here representing the applicant and petitioner, Toll Brothers, contract vendee for a 50-acre portion of the Field Home Holy Comforter property. We're before your board because the request or the request is for a rezoning or a map amendment to rezone what's currently a split zone site into the R140 and the RSP3 into the RSP2 in connection with a proposal to redevelop that portion with a 118 unit active adult community. With me tonight is Kevin E. Moses from Toll Brothers, as well as Joe Rena from Site Design Consultants, the project engineer. We're here tonight on a project update. We have submitted a substantial record to your board over the last couple of weeks, include most of it for secret purposes, but including about a 500-page EAF and various environmental studies and analyses, traffic reports, et cetera. What we'd like to do tonight is dive a little bit into the weeds, not too late, because I know it's a little late, but I do want to dive into the weeds a bit, because what we submit is the record before your board is that you're in a position to start directing staff to prepare a determination of significance for secret purposes. Back up for a sec. Your board is serving as the lead agency on both the rezoning petition as well as the site plan approval, although that's going to go to the planning board if the zoning is in place. We have spent several months, more than several, bunch of months before the planning board getting their recommendation on the zoning as well as the secret process. They've now issued their recommendation to you. We've responded and also provided all the record. And so what we want to do tonight is really hone in on the issues, kind of summarize what's before you and what the record says. So without further ado, let me go in. So what we've got before you is the revised site plan, the updated site plan. We showed that to you the last time we were here, I think in February. But just so a quick reminder, in response to the identification of an additional water course on site, the applicant has condensed development footprint. Still 118 units, but it's condensed the development footprint. Also, the planning board has proposed, and the applicant agrees, that about 14.3 acres in what I'm saying, the rear of the property, be filed, or conservation easement be filed over that to preserve any development rights or restrict any development on that area. So what you're seeing right now is the updated site plan with the two access points and the access road. The amenities up on the top left of the development next to near the stormwater management, and then also what would be the conservation area in the rear. So moving on to the SECRA record before you, and let me start with the SECRA beneficial impacts of the project, because SECRA does evaluate both potentially significant detrimental, but also potentially beneficial impacts. And so, of course, we're going to start with the beneficial impacts. So, this is an entirely age-restricted property, so 55 and older. So there would be no school children generated, or very little, but the study shows zero with this type of development. Does meet a critical need identified in the town's comprehensive plan. We did submit a pretty comprehensive analysis of policies within your comprehensive plan that this rezoning and this project would further. In some, it would certainly create more diversity in housing, more opportunities for senior housing and people that want to downsize but stay within the community. It's projected under the fiscal impact analysis about over $1 million in annual net tax surplus right now. Obviously, this is an undeveloped site and actually off the tax rolls, so that would create significant surplus for the town. I'll get into this further, but certainly highlighting the fact that there would be a $472,000 recreation fee because of the units, and obviously that's a required impact mitigation, as well as a proposal to contribute $150,000 towards a new field or actually upgrading your upper Hunter Brook field in connection with the removal of the existing field home field, and I'll get into that in a second. But also robust on-site amenities complex for the residents. There's a pool, potential pickleball or outdoor courts, and a clubhouse. And so overall, significant beneficial impacts to the project. So moving on to the next slide. So we covered this a little bit last month, but I just wanted to really dive into it. So you guys referred it over to the planning board for as we've already heard, a very diligent review process, just for the SECRA process, but in general. And what the planning board did was spend several months identifying areas of concern that they wanted us to look into as a potential environmental impacts. And so to highlight this is the highlight. There were more, but I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. But we submitted a recreational analysis to identify, okay, what would the potential demand on recreational resources be with this type of development, and then also how could we offset the potential impact of the removal of the field home. Stormwater analysis to make sure that all stormwater can be handled on site in accordance with state, federal, and city or local regulations. Joe is here to go through that if you have questions, but certainly have a SWIP and a full-blown stormwater analysis, a tree survey, aesthetic resource analysis. There were some questions, and we'll get into this in a second, but what the view shed would be from certain public locations, certain two trails or two public vistas that what could they see if this development went through, and we'll go through that in a second. A wetland and wildlife habitat analysis as to what's the habitat on site right now. How would this development avoid impacting it or potentially improve it, both from a water course standpoint, habitat, animal habitat standpoint, as well as a wetland and water course standpoint. We also undertook a historic analysis of the field home building, and I probably should back up, although I think it's clear, we've said it many times, but just so it's clear, the contract of sale would include the field home building parcel. What the proposal would be is to subdivide that out, not part of this development, and just preserve it. It's not going to be touched. We would or told is open to conveying it to the town, so the town may be able to use it for certain adaptive reuses or whatever it would want. what we were asked to do is we'll do an analysis of how could you actually adaptively reuse this building, right? What the town should know, can we adaptively reuse it? Does it have good bones? And so if we were to take it over, or you were to take it over, what could we do with it? So we also did a historic analysis on that building. The sum and substance of it is it's got good bones. There's a lot of adaptive reuse options. And so in the report, it goes through several options that you could consider. We also undertook an infiltration and inflow analysis, or inflow and infiltration analysis on site. The site would discharge into the Hunter Brook system. We understand that the Hunter Brook system at times is over capacity due to I&I throughout the system. We did a study of what I&I is contributing on site right now, and how would that be resolved, and I'll get into that in a second. And as I mentioned before, we submitted an updated EAF, which is about a 500-page document at this point with all the studies, analyses, et cetera. So going to the recreational analysis, there were two areas of concern, as I said. One was, well, what happens to the loss of the field, and what is there a potential impact with the loss of the field home? The other is what type of demand for recreational services would occur by virtue of a 55 and older development at 118 units. Let me focus on the field, because I think that's really what the analysis itself was really focused on, and because that was identified from day one from the town board, also from the planning board. So what we did was we first studied or undertook it, and we were working in collaboration with the town's Park and Recreation Department to understand what's the current usage of the field home field on site. This is essentially a practice field. The stats that we obtained shows that it's used about 20 to 22 reservations per week, but mostly on the weekend, sometimes during the week, mostly practices, and every once in a while a game. There's no parking there. I mean, well, there's parking area, but it's not formal parking, no seating, etc. What we then did was evaluate, okay, well, if you remove the ability for those 20 to 22 reservations or usage during the week, where could they go? And that's where the upper field on Hunter Brook was identified. Right now, current usage is it's only an overflow practice field, because it's not, it needs a lot of work. So if unfortunately two teams are practicing at the same time at Hunter Brook, one will go up there. Not the best field to practice on. Upgrades could improve that field such that it could be used at a far more higher rate for practice, even gameplay. What the Park and Recreation Department identified was a contribution towards upgrades or upgrading that field would offset the potential impact of the loss of the field home. So after several months of discussions, and Councilman Esposito is certainly involved in those discussions, what we've arrived at is a offer of a contribution of $150,000 towards the upgrades for Upper Hunter Brook. That would be in addition to the $472,000 recreation fee just by virtue of the 118 units, for a total of $622,000 in recreation contributions. You put on top of that, the over $1 million in taxes. That's a lot of available revenue to offset any recreational impact. Moving quickly, just I'll show the slide. Go ahead. Keep going. The stormwater analysis. If you have any questions about the stormwater analysis, I'm happy to turn it over to Joe to answer the questions. But if not, I'll keep on going. What we can say is that a full-blown stormwater analysis was undertaken, and all stormwater runoff at the site will be treated again in accordance with local regulations, with state regulations, as well as DEP regulations, because we are in the DEP.
Two quick questions on that. Will you have some mitigation for phosphorus built in, some filtration systems?
I'm going to turn it over to Joe.
What? Come on, Cooper. Come on. This is all you.
Hi.
Hey, Joe.
Yes, we will. That will be a requirement because we're in the Croton reservoir basin, we have to meet those standards. So yes, there will be.
So my,
level of
my
treatment.
follow-up question is what Dave Paganelli's would want me to ask, which is, you're responsible for cleaning those, upkeeping them.
That's correct.
Not being given over to the town.
You're not planning on dedicating this road? This is going to be a private community, correct?
That's correct.
And the 14.3 acres of conservation space, is that on the Catherine Street side? Is it on the top end, or is it down on Old Crampon Road? Because I couldn't see the slide.
It's on the back side of the back side of the property.
So behind
Or
the field home, so to speak?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, let me just say something real quick. We take a lot of open space, okay? Really not that beneficial to the taxpayers, to be honest. And the issue we have is trees, okay? Town board has already spent $75,000 this year, and I'm more than halfway through that money already, all right? With all this open space, when these units are in and the trees are coming from the town open space and they're dangerous and we get put on notice, we have to incur the cost of fixing that, in addition to which the 14.3 acres is being taken off the tax roll.
It's not being dedicated to the town. It's just an easement, a protection
It's an
easement.
Okay.
It would, yeah, it would not.
It's being taxed.
Yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
The
And
$1
then
million
you-
included that 14.
And you understand an easement, of course, gives us the ability, not the responsibility, correct?
Enforcement, but not the responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks. Thank you.
He knew the right word.
I know.
We're on it. We know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, is this property transferred from the field home? Because were they a tax exempt field home? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they're a nonprofit, so it is tax exempt right now. When the transfer goes through, it would.
Then it won't be anymore.
Yes.
So Dave, I don't know if you caught it, this is all new taxes, because it was, the
Yeah,
field
yeah,
home
that was off the books, yes.
Right,
Off the books.
Well, it was.
You got
He's
it.
right, right there.
Okay, let's go. You know what? Let's go to aesthetic resources.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Well, you can just go to the slide, and if we need to bring it up, then we'll. I think it's two. Yeah. Okay. There we go. So, all right. So let me skip to aesthetic resources because another area of concern that was identified by the planning board was would the development significantly impact any public view sheds? So there were two that were identified as areas of concern, and I'm sorry that it's really small there. We can bring it up larger, just that we just have to switch the slides. But the two areas of concern were the Sylvan Glen Nature Preserve, which is about a half a mile across Route 202, and then also what we've been calling the Croton Aqueduct Trail. I'm not actually sure that's actually part of the formal Croton Aqueduct Trail, but there is a trailway that's just to the north of the site, which Joe is showing there. And so the question was, how would the viewshed be changed with this development? So going from the Sylvan Glen Nature Preserve, the existing viewshed between this site and the preserve, which is about half a mile away, includes wooded areas. It includes Route 202. It includes developed residential developed communities and subdivisions already. And so the addition of this development within, as you can see, the pattern of development is not going to be, we submit a significant change
in
to
view.
the view shed. So what we did do was focus more on the view from the trail, the Aqueduct Trail, down to the north. And what we're showing right now is just one of the cross sections that we've done from that position. If somebody were there, oh, thank you. So if somebody were walking on the trail, as you can see that the two people walking on the trail there, there's a significant topography change between where they're walking and where the buildings themselves would be. In between that, there are certainly topographic changes that would block the view, but most importantly, you're looking at a existing wooded area. So the kind of lighter green trees that are taller, that's all existing, that's remaining, that's not being touched. And then to the extent that you could see through that area, those trees in the wooded area and the underlying shrub, there is a landscaping plan that is being proposed for both this side of the
drainage area, and then closer to the buildings themselves. So what you're seeing right now is the height of the plants when they're put in. And then you can kind of see in the background
Where they're going.
as they grow. So what we respectfully submit is that, although there was a concern that there might be a significant impact from people walking on the trail, at the end of the day, with the existing buffer, with the existing planting that's going to remain, and the additional planting, it's going to be a very limited view shed, and so it shouldn't be a significant impact.
I have a question. Sorry. Will you be accessing just off of Catherine Street, or will be a secondary access off Old Crampon Road?
Just off of Catherine, correct? Yeah. Two entrances off of Catherine.
In and out? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
She needs to know that too.
So I'll continue going forward. We also submitted a wetland and habitat studies to identify the function, benefit, and whether there'd be an impact to those functions and benefits of the wetlands. We are staying away from the wetlands for the greater part. There's a little bit of buffer disturbance because of the stormwater management, but that, as the reports show, will not significantly impact the function or benefit of these wetlands on site.
But it's considerably less. It's considerably less than your original plan because you kind of
Shrunk the whole front.
shrunk the whole thing.
You beat me to the punch. That was it. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. It's all right. And then similar with the habitat study, that the development itself is not going to impact significant wildlife habitats on site. The next piece is the historic analysis. And just to highlight again that what the purpose of it was, because we're proposing not to touch the building itself and potentially provide it to the town, just evaluating, well, what are the interiors, how it could be used, really more of a discussion piece for the town as it considers, do we want to take this or not as part of the project. So that leaves me with I&I. And so there are two pieces of two steps of the analysis, right? The first part of the analysis was, how is this project going to add to the I&I that's in the system already? And we did evaluate locations along the existing system on the mostly manholes where there is I&I occurring. The project would resolve that, because as part of the redevelopment, all of that infiltration and excuse me, and II would or all the problematic manholes would be sealed up and resolved. So from a site perspective, it's not going to increase any I&I in the system. The second question that's presented is, well, okay, but we know that the Hunter Brook pump station already has a capacity issue because of I&I elsewhere. And so what are we going to do? Because if we now add more flow into the system, how do you offset that impact? So we've been working with Mr. Ciarcia on potential I&I mitigation, because we know that the town is evaluating the system itself in conjunction with identifying what improvements to the Hunter Brook pump station does it need to do, irrespective of the project.
Right.
What Mr. Ciarcia has opined is that if this project were to either contribute or undertake, more likely contribute, but at a 1 to 1.5 ratio of I&I mitigation. Oh, I thought Dan was coming up behind me, but
not yet. He's
not yet. Yeah. So, but if we contribute at a 1 to 1.5 I&I mitigation for improvements in the system, that's a sufficient offset, and that will resolve or avoid the impact. So from a SECRA perspective, what we submit is that you have the information that you need in order to make a determination of significance as to whether or not there is a potential I&I impact, because there's already a offset that's identified to address it. That being said, we do understand that the town is still undertaking studies of the system itself, the entire system, not just our project. Toll has engaged its own consultant to run a analysis of the system to try to help expedite this study, because we don't want this to hold up the project itself. From a secret perspective, we believe you could reach a determination of significance. The issue is, okay, well then, if we were to move past that, and now we're going through the site plan process, we anticipate, because the planning board has already said it in their memo, how can we approve a project and let them turn on the tap? Although of course it's not that fast, but turn on the tap if we don't know, or if we haven't actually mitigated it. And so, what we're asking tonight is twofold. One is to hopefully reach a comfort level on the SECRA level about I&I mitigation, but also to the extent that we can push the I&I study forward, that would be very helpful to us. So with all that, sorry for taking up so much time, but the purpose was to sort of emphasize there's been a lot of work since we've last been before you, and the reason why you have binders probably this large now is because every stone has been unturned. It's true. Your planning department, your planning board has made us look for every stone, turn up every stone, and study it. So we hope that you're comfortable now, at least at this point, to turn to staff and say, okay, let's move towards a determination of significance in SECRA.
No, I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Yeah, I just sent
Dan a text.
I have him come up, but I know that Mr. Tegeter would like to come up. Because it has been a while since we've referred anything out on this, so let's have John come up and have a chat with where we're at.
Dan usually watches us in the. Yeah, he watches us. He
might
watches
have
us in
fallen
the office
asleep.
Yeah.
I think that's a good description of basically where we're at. Definitely want to acknowledge all the work that has gone into what they've done so far. The planning board did give you a memo based on some of the initial documents that they had sent in and that we had reviewed. So this latest package that you have has not yet been reviewed by them. So there's some work, I think, that still needs to be done. Staff needs to look at it as well. I want to make you think deeply about what's contained in those studies, because some of and I had a conversation with Dave the other day in which I don't know if you agree with me, but I described some of the things that we were talking about as some of the big hurdles here, which is some of the things that he talked about tonight, the I&I, the recreation, the historic building, et cetera. So there's a lot of parts here, and significant parts, and I think that they need to be given their due scrutiny to make sure that you guys are very well aware of what you're going to get. That goes for some of the visual aspects and things of that nature. I wouldn't necessarily be able to tell you right now that Sylvan Glen, the view shed's already marred by development, and that we don't need to, take a little extra look at that from certain vantage points. I can't tell you that right now. They may have reached that conclusion on their own, but, so I think in this case, we need to be diligent on the impacts that this project presents, and they are, there's some big ones, and then there's all the usual ones.
Right. The big ones are the ones we want to focus on.
Right. So we were really focused on a lot of these big ones, and they did a great job. I think the I&I that they're working on, I think Dan and they have reached, good conclusions on the path to take. So I agree with that. And I think that the next step is to, think about, first of all, have planning board and staff look at the package to make sure it's all, complete for you. And also that we are not missing anything that we need to look at. So for instance, I'll just throw one thing out, impact on emergency services. To what extent do you need to look at that? That's something for you guys to, toss around. And so a lot of work's been done. I don't think we're really, at a tipping point quite yet. It's pretty close, but I just want to make sure that everything is complete, and that's my message to you tonight.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
I have a question. We have flooding with Hunter Brook, right? Every time there's a strong rain, people's homes flood. Backyards are filled with water like swimming pools. do you have figures as to what the impact of this development will be on Hunter Brook itself? In other words, in terms of how much water can we expect to anticipate in addition to 8.5 inches of rain in 6 hours, which we enjoyed on July 10th of last year. So,
Never talk about that again.
well, but you know, it's like you said, these are some of the smaller things that the people that live there might be very concerned about. You know,
Good question. I don't think that we've looked at it specifically to a point in the Hunter Brook what the impact will be in an 8-inch rain. I don't know if
no,
they
no,
have.
I don't mean that. I mean, what will they add
General.
to that? An 8-inch rain, nobody can nobody can make determinations based on that.
They know what's going to be going off their site, but I will tell you that what they have to comply with is that what goes off the site now, whatever that volume is in any given rain, they cannot exceed that with this new development.
Okay.
So they have to.
So they'll be, but
they
they'll
have to
be
capture
basically,
that.
basically neutral in terms of.
It's supposed to be designed to be neutral.
Right. Good. Thank you. So they'll be using like infiltrators and things like that with respect to various ways of mitigating all that stormwater and what have you?
Yeah, they have some open basins, but they can speak more directly to it if they care to.
Oh, what's that? Retention pond?
Yeah, one other thing I want to mention too is
Retention pond.
on the historic adaptive reuse study, which I appreciate that they undertook, I would like to engage our historic consultant to evaluate that.
Great.
I think, well, Dan is actually not on site. He did offer a call-in or to come in, but I think you covered INI enough at this point, John, for a high-level view. So we're good there. You know, and the infiltration and not
I
being
haven't
able
had
to
a
see
direct
that.
conversation with Dan, but I think the description of the 1 to 1.5 mitigation is
Yeah, that-
reasonable, and I think that's a good basis to move forward, you know, to round out the INI.
Yeah, I know we spoke about it in the last special projects meeting.
Yeah.
So that's definitely needs to happen.
Yep.
All right, thank you, John. So I do have one other question, and John, before you run out, you may need to come back. When we look at all these studies, like we look at the recreation, do we ever look at advanced life services and our first responders and what we project?
Oftentimes, you do. You typically see that level when you're getting to larger studies, such as an EIS, right? But the situation we're in here is right now we're essentially in what's an expanded EAF. There's additional studies to round out the environmental assessment form. But you can ask for that, which is kind of what I'm saying, is to make sure that you are getting all of the knowledge about this that you feel is appropriate. And that may be one that you haven't gotten yet that you think you should. So it's that kind of look before you release it, you know, to the world, I think.
All right.
Especially with the temperature of, the lack of volunteers and.
No, that's why I was thinking.
Yeah.
It's becoming more and more
It's
of an
more
issue
crucial,
in our local communities.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Everyone's struggling all over across the board.
Ever refer out on those two, like ALS and YVAC, any of the.
We didn't get comments from them, but we can certainly call and ask.
Okay, yeah.
I have a
no,
meeting
no,
tomorrow also on one of the boards for ALS, so I'll bring it up.
Please. All right, thanks, John.
Sure.
Sorry, Dave.
Okay. So the only thing I would say is we would like some direction as to what the next steps are. We don't want to come back and have another meeting where it's okay. What else do we need? So what may be helpful then is either a direction to staff to say, okay, what is outstanding before the board can reach determination of significance, or.
So I do think that planning is working on that, because John said before they have the new stuff. They need to chew it up a little bit.
Yeah, which is that's fine. I think you can confirm what we've said tonight.
Yeah.
The only thing I'd say is the planning board has seen all of this. It's just,
so I'll tell you what I'd like to see, and John will tell you if that's a feasible aspect working through this. So I'd like to see them finish their look at it, get the information, get that referred out, because I think it's been about 1.5 years since this project's been referred out. John, is that semi-accurate?
Yes, from ours, it was done in 22, November, I believe.
November 22, so.
We just received some updated things
Time
from you,
flies.
which we've posted and we've sent as an amended referral.
Oh, great.
We are waiting for that information to come back.
Okay. So we're ahead of the game there on the amended referral. It's a very smart way to do it. Thank you. And then, once we get through planning, and get through their list, we could, the INI to me is really, really important. So I'd like to see that moving. John, you look like you want to come back up? No? Okay. There you go.
So, all right.
So I'd like to see us get the referrals back, get the work done, start moving ahead with the different studies that need to be finished off, especially the INI, and the solution, working with Dan on that. It really needs it in that area.
So on that, so as I said, Toll's doing an internal study along the line to hopefully help Dan get there.
Absolutely.
But I know Dan's got to do his own study. So,
We'll push Dan.
you could push Dan.
Yeah, I hear you.
I thought he was going to be here today.
That's all right. He's lucky he's not here,
Yeah.
because we'll be pushing him right out the door.
He'll be. I'm sure he'll watch it on
lovingly
tape.
push him. Don't.
No. Hey, listen,
Poor Dan.
we all got
So,
our pluses and minuses in life.
All right.
We take you good in it.
So we'll get Dan moving. on
and we'll
that.
get our study to you
Yeah.
guys.
We have a special projects meeting actually this Monday, John. Yeah.
Yeah, so perfect timing.
So
it is.
so we'll make sure that this is a major, part of it.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, that
Good
was a
to
very
see you.
sweet way of putting it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we have some miscellaneous items for discussion. We led off with Ken because we're going to put you at a midnight cap, Ken. So Ken, why don't you come up and talk to us about support legislation to to regulate the use of nutrient inactivants. And I think we were having a little problem finding the exact definition of that.
Yeah, what are they?
So, just a little history from Mohegan Lake with nutrient inactivants. In 2002, we had a treatment with something called alum in Mohegan Lake. And if you look at the historical records that DC has, that was the year of the clearest water that we've had in decades. What does alum do? It binds with phosphorus, precipitates it out, settles it on the bottom in an inert way that is not biologically available. Why is water clarity a problem? It's because of the amount of phosphorus in Mohegan Lake. So everybody that has anything to do with lakes around the world knows that one of the tools when you're having a problem that relates to high levels of phosphorus is to use a nutrient inactivant, something that will bind it so that it's no longer biologically available to cause problems. This isn't a silver bullet that solves everything if you continue to have phosphorus coming in, for instance, from stormwater, and I appreciate your question about that previously. If it continues to come in and all the alum that you've put in has been utilized to bind phosphorus, then you're back where you started, basically. But DC has had a problem with this. So we applied for a permit in 2014 to apply a larger dose of alum. We saw how effective it was, and we realized it would have been far more effective if it was more appropriately dosed. They asked us to withdraw the permit application. I refused to withdraw it, and eventually I learned why, because they didn't have a way according to their own internal regulations, of allowing its use. Now, why? It's just crazy. And I had a meeting last week with DEC, with people from Albany and people from Region 3, and a similar issue came up about what we're trying to do for this year with bacteria treatments. And they started calling it a pesticide use, which I knew was going to be the death knell, the same as alum was. So what's the issue with nutrient inactivants? The New York State Environmental Conservation Law defines anything that either kills or slows the growth of organisms in the lake as a pesticide. Because alum, by taking away the fertilizer for excessive algae growth, the phosphorus, you could say slows the growth. They said, well, that's under our law, that's a pesticide. But so it requires a New York State pesticide permit, but we can only give permits to pesticides that are registered by the United States EPA. And the US EPA doesn't consider nutrient inactivants pesticides, so it doesn't register them as such. And EPA told DEC, no, it's not a pesticide. You shouldn't treat it as a pesticide. So there was a circular issue where they said, well, it's a pesticide according to our law, but it's not registered as such, therefore we can't issue a permit for it. So after fighting since 2014 to try to get alum allowed in New York State, and that included, I corresponded with Governor Cuomo when he did this big blue-green algae initiative across the state because it was suddenly becoming a serious problem in many places, including water supplies. And they did all sorts of pilots all around the state to what's the best solution. The one thing they didn't do in these couple $100 million of pilots was testing nutrient inactivation. Why? Because the DEC folks didn't feel like they could consider that. So I wrote to the governor and I said, you should be trying this. It's used in just pretty much every other state in the United States. It's used all around the world. It's an important tool in the toolbox. You should include this in one of your pilots. And by the way, Mohegan Lake would be a great candidate for it. So without going into all the ugly history about that, they did do a pilot on Mohegan Lake, which I would consider, a 98% failure, 2% success, because they dosed it at about a tenth of the dose needed. They dosed it at, they had dosed it less than that. They dosed it at a tenth of what we had done in 2002, which had a great positive effect, but relatively short-lived, only a year or two. So using a tenth of that dose was useless. I mean, it was a waste of resources. And they did the same thing with Peach Lake. And then they did Honeoye Lake, another pilot, because they decided, well, we need to study this more. It's been studied all over the world. It's in use for decades. There's no need for DEC to be recreating the wheels. But they did another pilot, much more money at Honeoye Lake in the Finger Lakes. But again, they said, well, it would cost too much if we put in the dose that would really be effective. So they used 25% of the effective dose, and it had no effect. So I just lost it about this. And so I had a conversation with Senator Harcum, and I said, this needs to be dealt with legislatively. You need to change the state law so that they're not tripping over it, with this. And just change it to say, one, nutrient activants are not pesticides and therefore are not to be subject to the pesticide portion of the environmental conservation law. And two, they should be able to be permitted under Speedy's permits, which is a discharge of something into a water body. That's the permit we normally get. So that's basically what the legislation is. I worked with Harcum's legislative staff. They drafted something, took it in a slightly different direction that I wanted because they became obsessed with, well, we have to figure out how we certify the companies that are going to apply it. But I got them to back off most of that. I think there's going to be some language cleanup that has to take place. But the bottom line is it's been introduced into the Senate, and it's been introduced into the Assembly now. And I know I've had conversations, because Peach Lake was part of the alum pilot. I've had a lot of conversations with residents at Peach Lake, and also Warren Lucas, the town supervisor of the town of North Salem. And I've sent him a copy of this resolution, by the way. He said he spoke to both Matt Slater and Assemblyman Burdick, I think it is, who was the assemblyman for that district, and they both want to support this legislation. And he'll do something from the town of North Salem to support it as well. So I'm just asking, legislative staff asked me, do you have any letters of support? And I thought, well, the best one to get from Yorktown would be the Yorktown Town Board, if you're willing and able to do that.
I used to put Alka-Seltzer at the pool step of a individual, one of those the Michael Phelps pools that used to go, because if it had phosphates in it and you would put muriatic acid in a bigger pool, it would kill, it would be too strong. But Alka-Seltzer would bound my phosphates and put them in, I would vacuum them up and then take them right out. So there's a lot of these cool, I'm just saying, like, it would just drop it, come off the walls, and so that's what it is. In other words, what I'm saying is it cures the way, like, you know, the antacids in your tummy work. It works that way. Sorry, it's true. It's
All right, Ken, so I think we have a resolution coming up on that, and it's some good stuff. And thank you for the fight, because I know, look, you do such great work at the lake. It's an asset for our community that we can't use half the time. And, you know, to get it cleaned up, to get the phosphorus out, the blue-green algae. Now, didn't they do something right in our own reservoir with blue-green algae right down in the Croton Reservoir along the edges there?
They were working on an invasive called hydrilla in the Croton
Yeah.
Reservoir and using herbicides or pesticides to kill
okay.
that, not blue-green algae.
All right.
I have a question. We've been discussing the catch basin filters, correct?
Yes.
When we replace those filters, will we have any knowledge or indication as to what amount of phosphorus has been removed, or if we're just spinning our wheels? How will we know?
Well, to actually know, you'd have to test the filter.
I mean,
the
I'd like to know,
cartridge.
right? We're
However,
spending
there's-
thousands of dollars.
There's you know, there's science about that, and there's
So,
calculations.
but is it something we
there's
should
ratings.
do as we're going to continue on this phosphorus mitigation theory, that's the problem with the lake? And, you know, we put these special basins in, I think 13, 12, 13, forget.
9 or 10.
Whatever. And, you know, now that we can address it as we have a Vactor, we can change those filters, but even the cost of the filters is $2,500.
$250 a piece.
Yeah,
ballpark.
$2,500,
Yeah.
give or take.
Yeah.
I just would like to have some, you know, if we could figure out a way to just test one of them and say, oh, this is really working out great. You know, it's doing its job.
There's no way to test the water that comes through the filter versus the ones that don't have the filter?
Well, we had some stormwater testing done, but you're asking for a significant expenditure of resources where this is all scientifically determined. And I just want to say that we've had a $30,000 grant from DEC to do stormwater phosphorus mitigation planning, including stormwater retrofits and green infrastructure. I have the draft of the final report, which should be finalized in the next couple of weeks. It has a lot of calculations about this. It selects and recommends different things, such as the catch basin inserts in different places around the lake. This will be a future discussion that we'll have to have, and possibly about the use of the grant writer to get funding. And from Dave's point of view, I'm sure the maintenance of these things going forward, once you install them,
Yeah,
and whether it's worth it.
Well, we
how
are
much
dealing
it
with the same
costs.
thing with east of Hudson over on Route 35. You know, let's cut down a whole bunch of trees, okay, so that we can then eliminate phosphorus from the water. So that's not a catch-22, right? Cutting trees down for solar panels, same thing. You know, I just would love to know, are they working? You know what I mean? I mean, I don't think that's asking a lot.
I mean, we can hope they are.
As we're
That's the
spending
million-dollar
taxpayer
question.
dollars, you know, I'd like to know that they're working. You know, that I would even try to find the money to at least test them once. So then we would have clarification that indeed it's being clarified.
I think the filters work until they're filled up, so to speak. Certainly if silt comes in and the catch basin is filled with silt, you know, and the water's just overflowing or going around the filters, it's not working.
When we take them out, it's not like we're going to be able to see, oh, look at all that phosphorus, right?
You
It's
might-
it's an abstract thing.
I can't answer that, but we'll have a future discussion about
Okay.
this. I think tonight's
Yeah, I just
not the
before I
time it is
before,
out.
before I take over that job.
Ken, if you could find out some of the specs on those, that would be great, on the filter
Yeah,
system.
they'll be in the engineering
Perfect.
report.
Thank
It's
you.
got a lot of information there.
Thank you, Ken. All right, next up, public safety and our highway superintendent, Dave Paganelli.
Okay, so there have been some questions as to the Traffic and Public Safety Committee meetings. Why aren't they held in public? One resident who sits on one of the town boards questioned the validity of the committee, and I believe Town Clerk Diana Quast found, what was it that you determined with respect to the traffic and safety? Supervisor Siegel had eliminated what existed, correct? And then just prior to that, there had been a determination as to who would be on that particular committee?
Yes, it was basically disbanded, and it was made into basically a town committee.
Okay, now, as a town committee, the question becomes, is it necessary or appropriate to have televised meetings? That was the question.
I think I'm going to have to give that to your town attorney.
Well, that's the question.
Adam?
Oh, it has a function, but
Dave,
here's,
Dave, can we have our attorney answer?
yep, please.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like opining off the cuff for these types of things, so I'm happy to.
Research it?
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So,
Then I'll also say that, thank you to the town board, thank you to Deputy Supervisor Lachterman, thank you to Tom Diana, who, participated in this for quite some time with us and brought his expertise as a former police officer to the table. The committee is made up of myself, 2 police officers from Yorktown, Robert Rohr and Max Ellsworth, who are our traffic safety police officers, and Bill Bertram, a resident representative who is a retired White Plains policeman who was in charge of public safety and traffic down there. So it's an interesting thing. And these things are discussed in depth and are not willy-nilly. I'm working with Deputy Supervisor Lachterman and Town Clerk Diana to get these up on the town website, put up how the committee was, in the interest of just having the residents be able to have a look at this before we have a public hearing. So I'm just here to give you a brief overview of where we stand right now.
and Dave, I will say that your traffic safety meetings, sort of, trying to challenge the town board for length of time. So
Right? Am I right?
that was one heck of a meeting.
Oh, gosh.
But it's great to have such experts. Robbie's fantastic.
Yep.
Max, I know, couldn't make the last one, but Bill, what a wealth of knowledge, and thank you.
Good.
And
Thank
thank
you.
them for their service.
So the way I laid this out, and we'll make it available on the town website. What we're doing now is I'm coming to the town board with respect to these issues that we've addressed and we've spoken about. And the ones that need legislation, I would then ask you at that point to direct the town attorney to draft the legislation, at which point then we could schedule a public hearing.
Yes.
Right? Is that correct? All right.
Exactly the process.
Sounds,
Good job, Dave.
sounds correct. Okay, first request, speed bumps on Spruce and Sunny Ridge. Decision, no. Doesn't meet the criteria of 85% of the vehicles being 20 miles an hour over the speed limit, which would have been 36 miles per hour. Okay, that's the minimum criteria. Then it goes into, grade, various, different amount of traffic on different roads. So we will also print the criteria on this new section of the town website.
Dave, I'm sorry, just for everyone's benefit, these are suggestions that have come into traffic safety.
Right, from the residents.
From the residents. Every one of them is looked at. It's not like it goes into a vacuum. So they go through these, and Dave is now bringing through, part of what I'd like, the decision process, how they go, and then we could, as he said, put what we need into a law, put these up on the website so everyone can see them, and it's,
People can come and speak to it at a public hearing.
Right, but, all the voices are heard from those that have the traffic issues, and we really want to keep that focus, so thank you.
Good. Stop signs on Wildwood Street at Swed Circle. Decision, no. Monitored and speeding was not observed. Stop signs, and this is going to be something you're going to see resurface periodically throughout this. Stop signs on primary roads to allow secondary, or on secondary roads to allow tertiary roads access to get onto that road. That's not appropriate. That's not what stop signs are for. All right, stop signs are if there's a sightline issue, if there are various issues like that. They're not meant to allow. We've had requests years back for people, everybody on Strawberry Road, every road coming out wanted stop signs on Strawberry Road. We would have 7 stop signs in the first half of Strawberry Road. because they have a hard time getting out of their streets. You know, so
Dave,
that's-
can you just define for the audience the primary, secondary, tertiary roads and how that's decided?
Okay, so let's say a primary road is Curry Street. Okay, a secondary road would be Somerston. Okay, a tertiary road, being third in line, would be West Cora.
So in the layout of the map, you have
primaries are like Underhill Avenue, Curry Street, North.
but you have Curry, and then Somerston would dump out into Curry.
Right.
And
West Cora would dump out into Somerston.
Into Somerston.
Well, actually, into Poplar, into Somerston. Yes.
So the primary road is at Main Road, where the secondary comes right into that.
Correct.
And a tertiary comes into something that comes into a secondary.
Yeah, more neighborhood roads that aren't accessing a primary road.
Yeah, just so everyone is on the same page.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Stop signs at Wildwood at Sweat Circle. No. Monitor speeding not observed. Stop signs not meant to control speed. Wildwood is a primary. Sweat is a secondary. No accident data to support issue. Stop sign already exists on Wildwood at Suncrest. The fact of the matter is, Wildwood, and I didn't put this in because I didn't want to confuse anyone, not you guys, but our residents. Wildwood is really a secondary road. All right. Sweat would be a tertiary road. It's a circle. So, but that's the way it is. This was an interesting one. This goes back to when Greenwood Street was closed for the culvert on Veterans Road. Residents on Greenwood Street requested no through traffic on Greenwood Street. And the decision clearly was no, you cannot limit the use of public roads indiscriminately. Request 2 stop signs at London Road at High Ridge Road. Okay, again, doesn't meet the criteria. Stop signs on a primary or secondary road to allow access from a secondary or tertiary road are inappropriate. All right. Whitehill and Hunter Brook, make safe the intersection. Yes, add 2 stop signs. Actually, we need a law for that because I did put those 2 stop signs in already when we had the closure and we were trafficking 8,000 cars a day down Hunter Brook. And it was, when we had the closure in Old Crampon for 4 months before we got the traffic lights and the approval to open 1 lane. So, request blinking stop sign at Ridge at Halleck's Mill. We will order blinking stop sign and we'll redo the stop bar. We had a similar request. That doesn't require a local law. We had a similar request on Ridge Street at Van Cortlandt Circle and put up a secondary sign, the universal sign with the stop sign with the arrow pointing down to make people more aware of it, that, which did not require local law. Arrow for turn traffic light at Ridge and Granite Springs Road. No, the accident data does not support it. 3-way, this is another instance that we're discussing. 3-way stop at Giordano at Baldwin Road. No, stop signs on primary roads to allow easy access on secondary roads. Accident data does not support. 0 accidents in 2022. 1 not serious accident in 2021. 4-way stop at Hanover and Underhill. That's an interesting one. Stop signs are not used on primary roads to allow secondary road access. Proposal was flashing stop signs, more enforcement with the bus company, as they're not supposed to use that intersection. Rather than avoid coming past Railroad Park, they go straight past the firehouse and come down Underhill there. So that they're not supposed to use that. That's in their site plan. So we're going to speak to them again. Additional signage will put up indicating that there's an intersection, slow sign, the intersection sign, vampires, the intersection sign. Okay, reduce speed limit. This is a request from Katona Management on behalf of the residents of High Ridge, Hitching Post, and Woodfield Court. They wanted to reduce the speed to 15 miles an hour. They had polled all their residents that in those managed communities. I believe 60, when I spoke to the gentleman last week, 68 out of 150 responded. Nobody responded negatively to a reduction in speed. 15 miles an hour is unrealistic, so we agreed that we would drop it to 20 miles an hour. So that would require your expertise. Four-way stop at London and Quinlan. No, that's been proposed numerous times. 2 flashing stop signs on London, stop ahead signage and stop bars. The flashing stop signs are already up. Cars parking on Cooper. Yes, no parking on both sides, 200 feet from East Main Street, heading up Cooper. No parking on Haymaker, north side from Ridge to the end. Yes, cars causing dangerous entry and exit from Haymaker to Ridge. Request. Here's an interesting one you don't hear every day. Sign for no exhaust brake on Underhill going downhill to Route 118. Decision, no. Liability for an accident as a result of inability to brake adequately. And I think that I may have made an error on that. I think that was going down to 129 if I'm not incorrect. I just, when I was typing this up, my secretarial skills leave a lot to be desired. Make safe intersection southbound to Conic Parkway. As you're coming south on the Parkway, getting off at Underhill, the entire area is within New York State DOT right away. Sideline to the east is severely obstructed by the stone wall that is there, and the state is aware of it, and I believe they had said there was nothing that could be done about it, if I'm not incorrect. Speeding on Curry Street, blind corner and 15-mile-an-hour park safety zone. We're going to do a traffic study to determine speed. Oftentimes, when you're standing or you're walking your dog, and you're here, and a car goes by, it seems as though it's going much faster than it's actually going. So that's why we like to do a traffic study.
I have that argument with Carol all the time.
Oh, I've had people say my big trucks are doing 50 miles an hour. Those trucks with a load of salt on them couldn't do 50 miles an hour if they were coming down Wood Street. We go. So stop sign on Mountain Road at Perry Street. Decision was yes. It's sort of a wide mouth there, and all the people coming out of the side roads, Mountain and Osceola, and those roads would, have an issue because people coming from both directions. Reduce the speed limit on Baptist Church Road to 20 miles an hour. Currently, the limit's 25. We're going to reduce it to 20. Stop signs at Spruce and Judy. Sightline issue. Yes, we're going to add 2 stop signs because there are huge evergreens there that definitely block your ability to pull out there. And short of cutting down some of these trees, it probably has taken 25 years for them to grow. Address accidents in Underhill and Hanover. We discussed that already. Speed on Underhill. Reduce the speed from 40 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour between 118 and Overhill. All right. That's sort of where there's a lot of action. Rochambeau is coming out. There's people coming out of Cardinal Court, people coming down Glen Rock. There's a lot going on right there. Yep. So don't block the box at Rochambeau and Cardinal Court. Yes, and I believe it is already included in the traffic mitigation plan for Underhill Farms development. I had seen, when I had looked that over, I had seen that they had mentioned that. Speed bumps on Springhurst Street. Nope, based on traffic study. Speeds observed, average speed observed 25 miles an hour does not meet the criteria. Stop sign at Strang Boulevard and Woodlands Drive. Okay, that was requested by some residents at Hunterbrook Condos. Is that Hunterbrook Condos there? Off of Legacy there to the right as you're going in? So initial thought on discussion of this would it back up traffic out onto 132, but, especially during sporting events and what have you. But the overall decision was that since it's a stop, it's stop and go, stop and go, stop and go. So we'll give it a shot. Speed bumps on Sagamore, no. Based on traffic study, average speed 25 miles an hour doesn't meet the criteria. No parking signs on Revere from bike path uphill, both sides to the corner, yes. People park there. The bike path is there. I actually spoke to Evie from Westchester County Parks today because he had called me and asked what I do to stop bars over. And after the incident that occurred on Birdsall, I said, no, I want no part of your stop bars that I have to sit in court and say, no, they weren't bright enough or whatever the case may be. So, and I also spoke to him about, because that is a dangerous intersection. And I spoke to him and they do have plans of putting gates up there.
Great.
So, that'll be good for the bicyclists as well as the residents.
Yeah, that was my suggestion to him. And,
Yep.
it's unfortunate. We've had a couple of accidents there. And if it
Well, you're
carries-
coming right around the corner, and pith is right there.
Right, but, you know, a lot of the times, it's not even the vehicle, it's the bicycle.
Right.
Like in the.
Well,
field.
look at the unfortunate situation on Birdsall.
Yeah.
You know.
So that's really a big problem there, and, you know,
Okay, speed control on Wood Street. We're going to lower the speed limit on the hill to 20 miles an hour between Mountain and East Main Street. We also discussed, which is not indicated here, reaching out to Putnam County. Apparently, they have some aversion to limiting tractor trailer traffic. Say that 3 times quick. She sells seashells by the seashore. So we're gonna. So we're going to reach out to them and see because if we have tractor trailers coming down Wood Street, all right, and they get to our town, where are they going to go?
I don't know.
Right, they're not going to back up. Now, the worst scenario would be if they came down Perry Street. Wood is a nightmare, but Perry would be even worse. So we're going to reach out to them and see if we can maybe find some resolution with respect to that.
Good idea.
No parking on Birdsall in from Route 118. Yes, apparently the homes in from 118 on Birdsall are experiencing a lot of parking there. People that are attending a business that's in the area. So in order for them to get in and out of their driveways, we're going to put no parking for 400 feet from the curb line on Route 118 heading up Birdsall. Plus, that's where we had the incident as well, which it'll be better to have a good sight line there. You know,
Absolutely.
you know, truck traffic and speed on Aqueduct Road. So every time the Taconic Parkway gets shut down, Aqueduct Road turns into a racetrack. We're going to have a 4-ton weight limit, lower the speed to 20 miles an hour, no tractor trailers and trucks local delivery only. Speed bumps on Loader Road between Evergreen and Quaker Church Road. No, does not meet the criteria, and it also doesn't meet the criteria in terms of the grade for certain. Okay, request, park and ride, Route 6 by the new golf course. It's been observed that tractor trailers are parking there overnight, for whatever reason that may be. The town board members, some of them reached out to me and said, hey, what the heck's going on with those tractor trailers up there? So we created a sign that says, you know, commuter lot, no overnight parking, no commercial vehicles. Okay, and we'll see how that works out. The sign itself has done nothing. So perhaps some enforcement, once we have a local law, might help, you know. 1338 McKeel Street. Kids are hanging out. Darn those kids. I hate those kids hanging out. They wanted no parking, no standing, no loitering. No.
We can't do that.
No. You know, the police will monitor the area. Ridge Street requested speed bumps. Traffic study does not indicate necessity. See, you wonder why these meetings aren't televised. Oh, no, this is your stuff. Problem with speed on Amazon Road near the intersection with High Street. They wanted to reduce the speed limit, put up electric speed signs, and an always stop at High Street. All right, that is a blind corner. I mean, a really blind corner. There are rock outcroppings there. When I paved Amazon Road, I had to call Cornell University and find out how wide a road could be to be able to legally put a double yellow line on it.
Yeah,
And
'cause
that,
it's so small.
yes, it's narrow.
That's why I'm like,
and
like,
that
get
road,
all that stuff
that road was within 6 inches of not being able to put double yellow line on it, which would have made it more dangerous. But decision, speed not observed. The topography unto itself creates an obstruction to speed. Blind corner, prohibit the installation of stop signs. Proposed to install slow curves ahead signage and intersection ahead signage. All right. Speed bumps on Lookout Street. Doesn't meet the criteria for speed bumps. That's a real little neighborhood street. You know, we find when we did the speed bump monitoring for speed monitoring on Farm Walk, we found that 90% of the people that were speeding were people that lived there. You know, what do you think on Lookout Street? It's not like they're cutting down Ridge Street to get to.
Well, even up in that area, there are a ton of stop signs.
Yes, there are. Every corner there's a
Actually,
stop
isn't
sign.
that where we broke down plowing?
Yes,
In that
it
area?
is where we broke down plowing. I wish you wouldn't bring that
Well,
up.
I'll pretend it wasn't your fault.
It never happened. It was my fault. Traffic light on Strawberry at Foothill. We're going to add two flashing stop signs on Strawberry at that section because people do pick up speed, and that road, I would say a good 80% easily is people that are cutting through Yorktown to get to Cortland. And, you know, and it makes it difficult for those people who live on Strawberry, you know, to get in and out of their driveways. And, you know, so hopefully the stop signs will, you know, intermittently stop people. And the last but not least, two stop signs on Raven Crest at Elk Court due to a video of a car exiting Elk Court and not stopping, making a left onto Raven Crest. No, stop signs are not used on primary roads to facilitate access from secondary roads. You know, one person goes through a stop sign and pulls out onto a primary road. You can't put stop signs on the primary roads. It's, you know, we'll turn into Central Avenue.
No, absolutely not.
I'd
And,
like to not do that.
We'd rather not.
and I don't think we could legislate poor drivers out of existence.
If we could, we would have a long time ago.
Because I will tell you, you know, even the three-way stop over by the firehouse, I can't tell you how many cars just like, you know, one car goes and the other one blows right through with it as the other cars are starting with the three-way. And
Yes, but I will say this, that particular intersection, I see more people complying than regular intersections with 4 stop signs. You know, I mean.
But you still catch
Oh, you
them,
see it, yeah. One car goes and the other guy's right with him. Yeah, oh yeah, especially coming into town in particular.
All right, so
All
Dave,
right, good.
Dave, I think we, you know, get these up online.
Good.
Give Adam the ones that need the laws.
Yep.
We could get them drafted fairly easily, I think. And then we could have a public hearing on it. Dave?
Yes, sir.
Also, just one thing to add, I know you've probably looked at it. There's some concern about the speeding on Quaker Church.
Our section?
Yeah. Well, so our residents. And I don't know if we could talk to Rob.
Well,
Scalano.
we put a stop sign up at Quaker Church where it hangs a left into Somers. We added a stop sign on both ends there.
Oh, like when you're going straight
Well,
down.
I'm wondering about a like a flashing, you know, one of the, and I'm not sure the price, and I'll look for a grant for them. But the flashing speed signs like we put up on Hanover. At
Yeah,
least-
I think what those that we put up on Hanover, I think that was that $75,000 state grant that we put around all the school zones, you know, in particular. So if we got, I think we got 12 of those for $75,000. So what does it come out to? Like $6,000 a sign? I mean, it's not a cost devastating scenario.
Right. All right. Just something to
Might be a good
bring.
thing.
into
So
your
I'd imagine you're talking about as you're coming down Quaker Church, either direction, right where the house with those big rocks is out front, in that hard turn there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that in there-
Perhaps
and-
we could talk to Somers and see if they want to go for one, and we could go for one, and we just cut the.
Well,
price
that
in
would be
half.
the issue because when I put the one up on Somers' property, their town clerk reached out to Diana and said, "What's your highway superintendent insane? He's just putting signs up wherever he wants." And Diana said, "Yeah, he
Yes,
is actually
yes,
kind
he
of
is.
insane. He does whatever he wants." So then there's that. You know, when it comes to safety, I will do what I want.
Yeah, safety first.
The Mad Yellow Hatter.
So thank you so much. I'm sorry
Dave,
it took so long.
Thank you. No,
No, that was
really
amazing.
important stuff. So
That's
Tim
great.
Judge, Teton Lake Dredging Project. At least you guys
Hi.
were entertained back there. I could see big smiles.
It's getting cold.
Tim, nobody told you to bring your PJs?
Well, I thought about it.
Yeah,
but
next
no.
time.
Hey, thank you very much. Much appreciate the opportunity to come up and give you a quick update. We have applied for DEC. We talked with Army Corps of Engineers. The Army Corps of Engineers is not going to issue a permit. They don't require one, primarily because the only thing going back to Teton Lake from the dewatering of the solids in the geotubes is water, and the solids are held back, so there's no filling in of the lake. So we're okay with them. Brian Orzel sent me an email that said, if you're okay with just an email going forward, that's it. If you want a formal letter, it's going to take months, but I will have a copy of that to you.
I think the email is more than sufficient. We have them all on
Yeah.
speed dial, so to speak, in our
Yeah,
email. so.
exactly. I think, it answers the question. We're putting together a written response both to DEC and to the letter from DEP, which came through the town board. We're just waiting on getting a couple of the pieces of information together. Primarily, one of the questions was about the septic system and actually mapping that out, because it's right next to where we're gonna do the dewatering in the Berlin Road parking lot. So we've mapped it out, they've marked it out, we had a surveyor come, the surveyor has done a survey to mark those spots. That has now gone to our engineer, but they got it just at the end of last week, so it takes a while to put that onto the site plan.
What is their concern? They don't want the water being filtered over the septic field?
No,
or-
the issue is they want to make sure that the weight of the geotubes does not cause any issue with the septic field or the pipes the force main bringing it in. And basically, the weight of the dewatered solids is not going to crush any of the pipes. They're Schedule 40 and they're relatively small. The question is, if you have weight that's unevenly distributed, do you affect one of the joints? And so to deal with that, you put down steel plates underneath where you're going to be doing the dewatering, and that prevents flexing because the steel plate uniformly distributes the load. So that's the engineering solution. It's not a very complex one. We're just making sure that we can provide the proper information back to DEC and to DEP since they had that question.
Okay.
The other things that are moving forward on this, we're going to institute something called a soft start. So one of the questions DEP had was, how do you avoid impacting vertebrate organisms that live in the bottom of the lake? In the wintertime, turtles burrow into the mud. They stay in a state of hibernation or torpor over the winter. How do you get them to flee in the summer because they also occupy that area when you'd be doing the dredge? When they did the Cuomo Bridge, they used a soft start for driving piles. And essentially what it is they start the vibratory driver for just a few seconds, about 30 seconds, they shut it off, they wait an interval, they do that again. And what it does is it essentially alerts the organisms and scares them off and gives them time to get out of the way. I've done a lot of literature research in the scientific literature. They don't really do this much for freshwater aquatic organisms. But understanding what the Corps has done, looking at old Army Corps of Engineer documentation, other work that's been done primarily with marine mammals and with sea turtles, we're going to institute something somewhat similar for the freshwater. Maybe a step beyond what we would normally have to do, but considering who T-Town is and what T-Town is about, we want to make sure that we're, being very cautious about it. We did get you the letter regarding T-Town taking responsibility for the maintenance of the culvert.
Much appreciated.
Yep, and that culvert will be dry. We will talk with you. And,
Yeah, I was going to ask, this dredging, is this material going to be dried out and used on site, or is it going to be hauled off site?
Most of it will be used on site. Some may be moved around,
Okay, but I'm not going to have like 500 triaxles destroying that road. Okay. These are the things that keep me awake at night.
Only 400, Dave.
Well,
Thank you.
don't have to worry about that one. A lot of it, some of it's going to get used up on the Hidden Valley Meadows site.
And we appreciate you guys also whenever we're mowing down in that area, allowing us to leave our mower in your Berlin Road lot overnight. So thank you.
Yeah, and so one of the other questions that DEP had was regarding reseeding the meadow, and So
Oh,
that's.
step up to the microphone better.
Sure.
He's yelling from the back there.
Okay. So making sure that when we redo the meadow and replant that area, we're going to have 3 geotubes dewatering up there. That's the purpose of the culvert, is the inflow and outflow pipes to get the water up there, to dewater and take the solids and return the water back to the lake. And we're going to leave that culvert for small mammals and reptiles and
Want me to get you
amphibians.
a wildlife crossing sign?
Exactly, but they'll be underneath, so they won't get.
They can read.
squished, right? So that's a benefit there. And we've got a plan not only just to lay out what seeds are going to be used, we're also going to work to kill off the invasive seed bank, which is there by doing something called solarizing, which is essentially putting clear plastic over the soil and allowing it to heat
up, yeah,
so that it kills off the invasive seed bank, so that when you replant it, you don't have to worry about them coming up, because they're always going to make their presence known as soon as you cause disturbance to the soil. So we have those things going on. We're working on getting the last set of drawings put together, and we'll get that response back to you.
That's
Great.
wonderful.
Very good.
I'm sorry I haven't been able to make any of the, like the Eagle Fest and all. I had an operation and really wasn't pushing myself too much. But Lorraine, did you get down there last weekend to T-Town? Yeah. So I know Lorraine was bringing her granddaughter down for a visit.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. I also just wanted to say, on a personal note, I just wanted to express my condolences on the loss
Thank
of
you, Tim.
Supervisor Diana, a nice man, and appreciate that, and to all the residents of the town of Yorktown, and to his family, and to the members of the board here.
Thank you.
I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it. Thank
much.
you.
Thank you for acknowledging.
Good night, Tim. All right. We are now on to the Do Not Knock registry. Diana, take it away.
So we've talked about adding a do not knock registry, which basically would be a list of addresses that would be on file in the town clerk's office that we would give out to a solicitor or peddler, so that you can opt out of them coming to your premises. But in looking at the peddler and solicitor law, there's many parts that haven't been addressed in many years, so I think we should take a whole look at the whole law, add our do not knock registry, but I'd like to be able to come up with a draft local law to go over with the town board at a future work session.
Who would you
That's
like
about it.
input from? I know we've had some from the chief already.
Well, he would rather not even have a law, but, so, I think that we'll have to take a look. We have his input. We did draft one, a couple of years ago, and we worked together on that, so I know that we've included all those. But I think that we should really sit down and go over it, because, everybody hears things from the public of what they don't like, and there are restrictions. There's some things that you can't stop from, like politicians, you can't stop from coming to your door, and that's.
I hate those politicians.
Are you sure? I mean, some of us can, right?
Ed always shows up.
But, so I think we should take a look at the law, and I think that the public should be aware of, even if they sign up, that somebody may come to their door because they have the constitutional right to do so.
We had Ed, what was the peddlers going through that were selling,
Almay?
no, they were on Sedgeways or something like
Yeah,
that.
they were on Segway. I'm not sure if that was,
Was it
Pow-
Terminator or something like that?
what was that one?
They were going up against McHale. Yeah.
Oh, yes. What's the name of it? Fox, I think that was Fox.
Well, they just came around, they're like harassing people.
Was that the guy in the Segway?
Yeah. the guy
Yeah,
in
he
the
came from
Segway.
my house
Came to
on
mine,
a
I told him-
holiday.
I told him to get off, and
He segued right up to my front door, and I've got quite a long driveway.
So
Surprised.
those of you that haven't been on the board for as long, this is something Diana has been working on for an awfully long time, and I appreciate she's had input from me, being that I'm, involved in businesses and have a couple of businesses where I actually have to see her for permits every so often. But it's some great work. It's really, I think it's
well needed.
Well needed, and I think our town and citizens will really appreciate being able to get on there. So thank you.
There'll also be a portion in here that will be a violation where they can issue a summons or, so. Of course. There'll also be a section which would and be a violation, which would cost money if you end up going to somebody's house anyway. So
Yeah, no, I
think
really
it's
appreciate
important to
this.
have some type of response from our police department that they can issue
Sure.
some.
Any law has to have some teeth. Absolutely.
Yeah, my mother used to invite them all in at dinner time. And I would end up having, like, she'd buy knives, pots.
Did she have an Entenmann's?
At one
You
time-
always
at
got to have an
one time-
Entenmann's
What about
ready.
That was my mom.
That was your mom too? No, my mom would
That's for
actually
company,
give them
don't touch
dinner.
that.
Like it would be dinner time. She would give them like pasta. She would feed them. And then one time I remember sitting there as a teenager and they were testing our water, but we had well water and they were testing it for all of these chlorine and this, the other thing, and how to buy this infrastructure and all. I'm like, Ma, we have well water. And she's like, oh yeah, that's nice. He could still stay for dinner. I'm like, okay, this is getting a little crazy.
All right.
What about those resolutions?
Yes, those resolutions.
So that's how I remember Alma.
Okay, from the Albert A. Capellini Community and Cultural Center, authorize a lease of certain rooms within the Albert A. Capellini Community and Cultural Center to Phelan Self-Defense, Inc., a for-profit corporation, and that is subject to permissive referendum. Authorize the certiorari proceedings for a parcel known as Section 37.19, Block 3, Lot 27, 225 Underhill Avenue. That's a one-year certiorari. From the deputy supervisor, authorize the deputy supervisor to sign an agreement with G&G Municipal. Yep, we did that. Sorry, pull that back. From the engineering department, authorize extensions of ultraviolet lamp replacement disinfection system bid for the water pollution control plant, and that is a UV light system that kills bacteria in the water. Very, very important to the process here. And you'll see there are some things broken down because it's multiple functions that happen there. So we have Quartz Lamp Inc. for the lamps, Elite Textile Trading for the quartz sleeves, and we had the contractual option to exceed this bid for its final one-year term. So that is what's happening there. From the Human Resource Department, grant permanent status to Nazreen Kahori, Senior Office Assistant, Office Manager for the Building Department. Authorize the termination of Zoe Cosmo from the John C. Hart Memorial Library. From the Mohegan Lake Improvement District, so Ken could go home. Authorize the deputy supervisor to send a letter of support to the New York State Legislature and the governor for enactment of Bill S8614 and A9287 into law to legalize the use of nutrient inactivants in New York State.
He wasn't going home until, he's
Got to wait for the vote.
final vote.
And Ken, if you need any help,
I think you ought to take that one out and look at it separately.
Ken, if you need any help in the surrounding communities, talking to any of the supervisors, please let me know. See what we could get. And did you ask Vidot for a? Actually, yeah, that would still be Vidot on that side. Okay, so I would reach out to Vidot and to why am I drawing a blank on Colin Smith? Thank you, and see what you could do to get from them as well. No problem. From the Northern Westchester Joint Waterworks, authorize refund to water account 209804 due to an overpayment in the amount of $350.12. From the Police Department, authorize one police officer of the Yorktown Police Department to attend a DCJS-sponsored traffic crash reconstruction training class, April 21st through April 25th in Monroe County, New York. From the town attorney, authorize the controller to process the following budget transfer for the legal department, and the transfer is stated. From the water department, authorize the deputy supervisor to sign change order number 2, totaling $2,812.50 to be attached to the meter project agreement with Core and Main for additional plumbing needed at 18 locations. And authorize the deputy supervisor to sign an agreement with Weston and Sampson Architects PC for grant application support services for the Water District's structural relining project for $4,900. This is going to Weston and Sampson. It was they were chosen before. They do a lot of work with our water department, in particular in this infrastructure work. We are on a timeline to get this done. So there's a consent order, and it is extremely important that they see that we're moving, as this is also sort of like a whole project in the area running with us, Somers and Northern Westchester Joint Waterworks. It needs to show progress, and they understand that you can't shut down all of our water at once. So we may go over the time of consent, but this will allow that to happen. So may I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and before the last one, we'll wish everyone a very happy St. Patrick's Day coming up this weekend. Please be safe when you're driving.
And happy birthday to my husband tomorrow.
Yay.
Take him somewhere nice.
Shout out.
I have to work.
All right, and we'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, Yorktown.